once we can get going, I haven't heard of anybody not joining us, so hopefully they're just running late. All right, so I'd like to call to order the Public Health and Community Service Committee meeting on March 29th, 2023 at 8:32.
Hendricks, Ness, Shorten,
Here.
Van Hoff, Wagner,
Here.
Altoff,
Here.
Von Bergen.
Here. Okay, next we have minutes approval for Public Health and Community Service Committee meeting March 2nd, 2023. Can I get a motion to approve? Second. Mr. Shorten, Ms. Wagner, second. Are there any amendments or revisions? All right, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Good morning.
Right on time.
And Mr. Hendricks to roll. Next we have public comments. Do you have any public comments? None. Okay, great. We're just moving along here. Good morning. So next, new business, we have a couple of interviews. We're going to begin with Melissa Elias.
Here.
Is you, okay, great. For a position on the Community Development Housing Grant Commission. Thank you for being here. If you'd like to have a seat.
You can sit
Right over
here
here?
and the mic will pick you up.
Oh,
Either spot's great.
Thanks.
So thank you for being here this morning, Melissa. I'm Tracy Von Bergen. I'm the Chair of Public Health and Community Services. We'd like to take a few minutes to hear about your interest in this position, and then we'll open it up for questions from committee members. So why don't you start by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, great. Thanks so much for inviting me. I'm a newbie to Crystal Lake and McHenry County. I moved here from New Jersey around Labor Day, and my last job was with the New Jersey Department of State, and I had been actively involved in the Census 2020 effort, which was probably professionally one of the most rewarding things I've done in my life. I was, well, I guess, once a lawyer, always a lawyer. I started off as an attorney, and I've always been really actively involved in volunteer community service, and in particular, affordable housing. For me, housing and having a home it's a basic human need, and particularly with respect to my census work, wow, I mean, getting out there and seeing so many people struggling in so many ways, and just helping people connect and find homes and places to live. Homelessness is obviously it's an issue. It's a huge issue across the country. I've done a little bit of research since I got here, and I'm just really eager to be involved in these kinds of efforts here in McHenry County. And when I saw this posting, I said, oh, this looks like it's right up my alley, so I'm just going to send in an application, because one of my daughters lives here. She lives in Algonquin, which is how I ended up here. And she just had a baby. So I've been sort of like waiting to see, looking for the right opportunities to dive in. And to me, this just seemed like an area where, I could really potentially add value. And it's something I'm really passionate about.
Great. Well, thank you. Any questions from the committee?
Just one. So how'd you wind up finding out about the position?
I looked at the McHenry County website. Like, I
Okay.
periodically look there, and I've been looking at a number of community service organizations. Like I recently joined the Crystal Lake Y, and I've reached out to them because they do a lot of community service. I'm going to be meeting with one of their philanthropic representatives to look at at other opportunities throughout the metro Chicago area. I'm just so.
Okay.
It's like the kind of thing, you know, just sort of, I just sort of translated my New Jersey experience to McHenry County and said, okay, I'm just gonna look there and see.
Cool.
I've been looking at McHenry County Community College too, to see. So when this popped up, I said, oh, this looks really, like I said, up my alley, so.
Very cool.
Ms. Altough.
I just want to note that, Melissa, you are the fourth person in the last week of a certain age that said to me that they come in and they look for volunteer opportunities to transition, you know, their business professional experience into volunteerism. I think your resume is excellent. I like the fact that if you look at the current makeup, it would be nice to have a little bit of expertise from a lawyer perspective and your background, so,
Yeah, I kind of Google searched whoever, you know, I could find, and I was kind of thinking the same thing, that like my background and experience would probably complement what you've got here, so.
delighted. Thank you for the interest.
Ms. Van Hoff.
Yes, welcome, and thank you for the opportunity to, you know, tell you who we are, and also I'm excited like Pam that you're coming to volunteer. I just wonder, you said you were from New Jersey before?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Were you involved in any efforts for, you know, homelessness in that area?
Well, yes, actually, I'm sorry, I neglected to mention that I was a commissioner on the Madison Housing Authority. Madison's the town that I lived in Madison for, in New Jersey for, I don't know, 30 years. Okay. This is like a big move. If anybody told me 10 years ago I'd be moving to Chicago. I was like, but like it's a whole new adventure. It's a whole new chapter. So I was on the Housing Authority there, and then I've also worked with the county, the Morris County Housing Authority there. So like I've got experience with a lot of like HUD programs, and like, you know, the whole HUD situation is like so crazy and complicated, and in New Jersey, to be a housing authority commissioner, you actually have to take a number of classes and, you know, pass exams, and so it's pretty rigorous. And I actually think it's a good thing because it's so complicated. And then I was also on the Madison, New Jersey zoning board, and talk about complex areas. So, you know, one thing I did notice when I was, you know, Google searching around is it looked to me, and I could be wrong because I was, you know, or maybe it's been updated, but it looked to me like there were only 5 municipalities in McHenry County that whose zoning ordinances actually permit certain kinds of low and moderate income housing. So I thought that was interesting because we faced similar challenges in New Jersey, and you know, everybody's like rah-rah in favor of it, but like not the NIMBY concept, not in my backyard. So you know, I'm also a firm believer in, you know, you have to take things slowly, and you know, a lot of it is about education and bringing people and connecting. I feel like I'm a really good community builder. I don't come to much of anything with preconceived notions. Just, you know, I'm a good listener. I like to learn what other people think, and I think it's a really important thing, especially now because there's so many people who are so polarized in so many different ways, and you know, I like I said, this is my real passion. So.
Well, thank you. Affordable housing is certainly something that we have addressed here as a council and as a board. board, so thank you for your interest in
Yeah.
serving.
So I'm, if I should be selected for the position, I'm really interested to learn from all of you, what you've been doing, and what your plans are, and, joining in the team effort.
And I'm going to step in. We're trying to change the vernacular, so it's workforce housing now.
Okay.
Just so you know,
That's right. That's right. I
Workforce.
did see that
Workforce
term.
housing.
Yeah.
rather than
Rather
affordable.
than-
Okay,
Bad,
workforce housing.
bad connotation, you know.
It's like
sort of.
food insecurity.
There you go.
People are just hungry.
Well, actually, it's a little different.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, yes. I also was for a while the director of the Women's Center at County College of Morris, and it was primarily focusing on women that are victims of financial and emotional abuse. We had a shelter that was focused on victims of physical abuse, and I could see that you have some women's programs here too, so.
Talk to Lou.
I have a lot of hands-on experience with that too, so.
We're not laughing at you, it's just,
No.
everything you're speaking is.
She couldn't have walked it at a better time.
No, that sounds great. I mean, that's what I love. That's why I just figured, I'm just throwing myself out there to this group and see what they have to say.
That's great.
It is, it's
Thank you
wonderful.
so much.
Mr. Shorten.
I just want to welcome you to McHenry County and
Yeah.
Crystal
Thank you.
Lake. And I'm grateful that you applied to be,
Thank you.
jump right in.
That's the other thing. Everybody is so lovely here. I can't tell you. Everybody's so much nicer than me.
It's New Jersey.
It's like, oh, you're Midwestern, like warmth, and oh my God, my neighbor who lives directly behind me, when I first moved in, he goes, you know what? I'm just gonna mow your lawn for now because you just have too many other things on your mind. I was like, really? I was like, so nice.
Well, we're not like, we're civilized.
Mhm. Yeah. New Jersey's harsh.
I had a couple of good experiences in New Jersey. One was at the airport where I got saved.
From through the pandemic and working for the New Jersey Department of State, and it was a hard 3 years in New Jersey, really.
Well, I ditto the welcome here.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Okay, do we have any more questions? All right, well, thank you for coming in. Melissa, we will have deliberations shortly.
Sure.
And we will be in touch. You're more than welcome to stay if you'd like, or.
Yeah, I might stay and watch the meeting for a little bit.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so our next interview is with Matthew Irsay?
Yep.
Great, for Lake in the Hills Sanitary District. Welcome, thank you for coming in.
Thank you all for having me.
If you'd just like to begin by introducing yourself and why you're interested in that position.
All right, well, I'm Matt. I've been in wastewater for about 10 years now. Prior to that, I was a plumber for 8 years. So currently I'm the Public Works Manager of wastewater for the Village of Roselle. I've been in, I took over the board position. There was a resignation last year that I finished the term this year. And to be on the Board of Trustees of the Sanitary District has been a very fulfilling experience for me. Just because, I'm able to combine my experience in wastewater with, my love for public service. And, it's just been a new experience, being on the other side of things, being on the board side of things. So, not having, I guess, the control over the management and control over the administration of the treatment plant, and but just focusing on the governance and oversight of the district's funds and capital projects, and doing the approvals, and listening during the board meetings. So I would love to continue that with a full term. and just working with the district and seeing what they're doing there. It's just been it's been comforting to know that the level, the quality that they provide of service is it's really awesome what they're doing over there. So I'd love to continue to be part of that.
Great, Ms. Altough.
I actually remember your interview when you did fill the vacancy, so it's nice to see that you're still interested in continuing that responsibility. Tell me some of the challenges, or at least long-term plans that the district's looking at, and maybe capacity too. Just kind of the
Sure. So the district is looking at there's a lot of capital projects coming down the line. I'd say the largest one right now would be the Randall Road expansion project, the Phase 3 project. So there's a sanitary sewer main that is running along Randall Road in the furthest westbound lane, near Miller Road. So the district's been coordinating with the county on getting it moved or figuring out a plan for it, and so that's going to be probably over the next year or two. It's going to be a large project for the district.
And does it provide service then for all of those new businesses that are there along Randall? Is that?
Yeah, I think that I don't have the atlas in front of me, so I can't exactly tell you where it's coming from. But yeah, that line down Randall Road, I think that's a major interceptor line that comes from the west side of Lincoln Hills, and I think there's that part of Crystal Lake over there that gets picked up also. So, in addition to that, the district has been participating in the ComEd energy program. So, district's seen just in 2022 about $60,000 to $65,000 worth of savings just in electrical costs. And over the past 2 years to 3 years, there's been about $105,000 in electrical savings seen. So that's been a really awesome thing for us in the district to be participating in. Beyond that, there's other capital projects going on, like there's new sludge storage buildings going, and there's a big driveway replacement program, and we're coordinating with. We're going to be coordinating with residents about some conservation efforts on site, and restoring prairie land, and then there's the creek that runs along the sanitary district property, restoring that, creating some new prairie land in that area, planting some new wildflowers, and so it's going to be kind of a three-year rotation, 3-year cycle on that. So a lot of great things happening and I'm super happy to be a part of it, and I suppose that's what I got for now.
That's a lot. Thank you.
Well, since my involvement with Wonder Lakes Septic and water, I have a deeper appreciation for wastewater.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's one of those things you don't realize what you got until it's gone,
That's right, that's right. Thank you very much
thank
for
you.
what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, do we have any more questions?
Just thank you for reapplying.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your continued interest. And since we don't have any more questions for you, if
Okay.
you'd like to stay while we deliberate, you're more than welcome.
I'd love to, but I gotta go to work. So, I appreciate everybody's time. Like I said, I love my time on the sanitary district, and I'd love to stay there, and help out as much as I can. So,
Great.
yeah.
Well, thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Okay. So we are finished with all of our interviews this morning. So we'll move on to 5.3, which is deliberation and selection of up to one candidate for recommendation to the County Board Chairman for Community Development Housing Grant Commission for a term to begin upon appointment and expire December 15, 2025.
I'm gonna be my old self and ask if the committee is okay. We have two phenomenal candidates for two openings. I would just make a motion to recommend, making the recommendations to the full county board for appointment of each of these individuals to their respective
Second.
organizations.
Second.
Okay, so Altoff and Mr. Shorten. Okay. So all those in favor?
Aye.
All those against? We need to do a roll call for that. No, okay. So we are good for 5-3 and 5-4. Welcome, thank you.
Thank you.
So item 6, reports. Don't see any reports, so we'll move on to item 7, routine consent agenda. Is there anyone who'd like any items removed?
I just have to abstain from 7-1 and 7-2. That's it.
And
7-1.
I'd like to pull 7-1 through 7-4 off the routine consent.
Okay.
So then I'll make a motion to approve 7.5 on the routine consent. I'm glad you did that. No, I'm happy you did that. It was, I was gonna do, so it's
And I'm in
fine.
this awkward position, someone at my office came down ill, so at about 9 o'clock I have to dip out shortly for court attendance, and I'll be back shortly as well, but I realize I just pulled 4 things off the consent agenda, and I'm gonna be dipping out, so maybe I can just share my concerns about them, just generally, briefly.
Should we, hold on, I want to second her motion.
Yeah, let's
And then we
get
need
rid
to
of
vote real quick.
7.5. Yeah, thanks,
Okay.
Kelly.
All right, do we need a roll call for that one?
Wagner,
Yes.
Hendricks.
Yes.
Van Hoff,
Yes.
Ness,
Yes.
Shorten,
Yes.
Altoff.
Yes.
Von Bergen.
Yes. Okay, so we'll start with 7-1. Can I get
Hans coming up.
a motion to?
I'll make the
Discuss?
motion, I'll make the motion to approve, and then you can get a second and we can discuss.
All right,
I'll second.
so off Mr. Shorten. Okay. we have
Good morning,
Hans.
everyone. For the record, I'm Hans Mock, Community Development Administrator. And what you have before you today is the recommendations from the Community Development and Housing Grant Commission, who heard proposals for 2023 Community Development Block Grant funding. This funding would go into effect as of October 1st. We did receive our allocation already from HUD, so the numbers are accurate on there. Sometimes we have to work off of estimates, but we actually knew our number this time, which was nice. There's a wide variety of projects that have been recommended for funding, anywhere from public services, public facilities, affordable housing, and assistance to the homeless. So these are the recommendations after 2 days of hearings that you have before you. I'm happy to answer any questions about them.
Everybody,
Yeah, so just generally, like, just as an example, right, the Home of the Sparrow Marengo housing acquisition, it looks like $65,909 is proposed to be allocated from that on this resolution. And then there's an additional $230,000 on the resolution in 7.2 to the Home of the Sparrow acquisition. So for that, I think this same affordable housing in Marengo. So I guess one is this, are they tied together? Are they related? And is it something that the Home of the Sparrow is it a property or something that Home of the Sparrow currently owns? Or do they need to acquire it? And this is the proposed funding for I guess like a shovel-ready project, or?
That's correct. So they are proposing to acquire that property. What it is there are 3 properties in close proximity to one another. There's a 6-unit building, a 4-unit, and 2-unit building. They already own the 2-unit building from prior funding received from ARPA. and now they're looking at acquiring the 4-unit building. We would be combining these two different fundings together along with the prior allocation that they already have.
Okay, and I know I'm kind of hopping around, but since they're tied together, that affordable housing in Marengo, it's the acquisition, the 230,000 on item 7.2, that's to acquire the project, correct? Or the property. Now, this roughly 15,000, 50,000 allocated towards it, what is that going towards then?
It's the same, so you can acquire property under both programs, and you can do rehabilitation under both programs, so that would be eligible for either of those. Sometimes CDBG and home overlap. The thing you can't do with CDBG is construct housing, unless you have very special designations for doing so. So with the home and CDBG programs, acquisition and rehab are eligible.
So it's effectively, so they're looking to purchase a property for approximately 295,000 total?
Like
or
550,000 for 4 units.
And out of but what we're funding would be 295,000
Correct, with these two resolutions.
with these two resolutions? Okay,
Yes.
okay. And the housing acquisition there's already a property, or there's a building already on the property?
Correct.
And obviously it's affordable housing, but do we have like details of how that is gonna be implemented? Like, do they have to reconstruct, do they have to repair? Or
They are.
what's the program?
They have some promissory from the existing the existing owner of the property, to provide some of the rehab work that they're going to need. For example, some of the ADA compliance that they'll need for it. My recollection off the top of my head is it's for two-bedroom units. They would be provided to formerly homeless women and children at a rate of 30% or less of their gross income. So that's typically how the home program, requires it to work. And then they have to be under 60% of the area median income in order to qualify.
Okay. And with the McHenry County Community Development Housing and Grant Commission, I understand that these are the recommendations. Was anyone denied? Was this the full amount that was requested originally?
It was not the full amount.
It was not the full
So
amount.
with the spreadsheet that's in there, you would see the organizations that were denied. They would just not have any funding allocated. Typically, we'll include their request and then what the actual allocation is within the spreadsheet.
And they're still gonna be able, despite not getting the full amount requested, they still have the funds able to acquire it?
Yes, they were more interested in a 6-unit building, but they had to settle for a 4 in order to make this one work with the amount of funding.
If I could respond, I think Eric really raises a really good question here. How allocations get awarded through CDBG in ways that don't allow a program to fully operate, like to give them a little bit rather than give them an adequate allocation to. So Warport is another example. They asked for a larger amount and got 40. And I don't know how those decisions, well, I do, I was on the commission, but.
And I do apologize, I do have to run out just for maybe 10 minutes, hopefully. If we could either pass the matter and move on.
I have more questions though too, so why don't I do this? Can we move this, do we need a motion to move this further down the agenda and go on and maybe do other business and allow Mr. Hendricks to go and do what he needs to do and have him come back and then we can take action?
I would
this,
appreciate that if
yeah.
you guys are amenable.
Is that okay? Yeah, because I got a couple things too.
Well, I'll make the motion or I'll second it.
I made the motion.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Go be a lawyer.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Hans, just
I
here.
apologize every day for being a lawyer.
Hans, don't go
All
away.
right.
I'll stay right there.
Well, because the question is to you. I kind of give us a little bit of, I mean, Eric brings up good questions, and so that's my comment. All of these are in front of public health. Can you kind of explain what the process is and how they come to public health and why? And then maybe what the criteria is that the commission uses to do allocations?
Absolutely. So the whole process sort of works like this. October 1st of every year, we start the process for funding for the next October 1st. That was a result of a change to our program year that moved it ahead by 9 months. So it used to start on January 1st many years ago. So that process is that you have from October 1st to January 4th of the following year to apply for both programs. After the application process is over, the staff review the projects, provide a review of the projects to the CDHG Commission. The meetings are typically planned for home to be the first allocation that's done because sometimes there are CDBG dollars attached to those projects. For example, tenant-based rental assistance, we provide 20% of the amount allocated in service dollars so that they can provide case management and assistance to the clients. So we typically will hold those in January or February, and then probably March or April for CDBG. So this year we had CDBG and home at the same time. We've already allocated CDBG CV in February. So what happens is when we determine that a project is eligible and we were able to write a staff review for it, those reviews are provided to the CDHD Commission for consideration. Anybody that's eligible is eligible to come up and make a presentation to the Commission. The Commission will hear all of those funding recommendations. They will be provided with a spreadsheet of all of the projects, and we'll look at the total allocation available and each make their recommendations, which are averaged out in order to start the conversation on what funding levels should be provided. Within that, we do document, for example, how many units of housing are you going to provide with your grant? How many clients are you going to assist if it's a public service? So it really depends on the type of project. In the past, we've had owner-occupied rehab projects come in, so how many are you going to complete if you receive $250,000 for that project? So, each type of project is measured differently. Infrastructure projects will benefit a low and moderate income area, so that may be 2 census tract and block groups combined that will total a certain number of people that are beneficiaries of that.
Is going back to what Lou said, in that scope of criteria when you're evaluating, is part of that consideration the amount of money that they're asking for and what they really need to complete the project? Because I concur, we've had this conversation, I keep pointing at you, but there's nothing worse than asking for $100 and I give you a dime. You do nothing for me, right? You just actually, you made the issue even worse for me than if not. So
Yes.
where does that fall in? Because we're talking about this with senior services too, so from a holistic perspective, how are we going to guarantee that the money we allocate is in fact used and is going to be successful in creating these projects?
That's often been
A challenge.
a question
Yeah.
of pretty much every presenter. If you aren't awarded the full amount, will you still be able to continue
Exactly.
on with this project?
Yes, but nobody's gonna say no.
Well,
I mean,
and there are certain projects, that as a commission, we realize that if they don't get the full amount, for instance, one was a lot that Habitat for Humanity wanted to purchase. To get the lot, they needed, the full award. Otherwise, they would not have been able to purchase it. So that, that is something that is considered, during the presentations and then ultimately at allocation time. Unfortunately, I think we had, 4 million in asking.
Yeah, definitely. It's always
and
way more
only
than-
1.7.
And is
Yep.
that saying static, that 1.7? I mean, is there any opportunity in any of that looking forward, or is that gonna actually go down?
Yeah, so the recommendation is that they federally bring the level of CDBG from about 3.4 billion to 4.2 billion in this next 24 budget round. That would increase our funding level probably by 35%. It's not keeping up with the pace of inflation. I think one of the things that Lou said when she first came back on the board here was that she had been on the commission in the past, and gee, these funding levels look a lot like when we were doing this.
I was kind of shocked. I was shocked that it hadn't over 20, how long have we been in entitlement?
Since 95.
95. Yeah, like it hadn't, our federal allocation had not substantially increased in 19 years. I'm like, why? Why is that? I don't know why that is.
Is that true for the program overall, or is that true for McHenry County?
It's the
true.
program.
Yeah, from McHenry County. So I looked at.
I mean, are other counties getting more than we are, and has it increased for them? That's what I'm asking. I'm not asking.
It's
I
similar.
want to know what I'm getting.
Yeah, I would just say it's similar levels because nationally
Okay.
it's not funded higher.
Yeah.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, but here's the other thing. I looked at the unified funding. I called Hans about this. That was put out to us. And through the continuum of care, DuPage County gets 6 million. We get 1. I'm like, what? Why?
Population?
What?
Is that
No,
what it is?
no, I think
No.
it, well, I don't know, I think it maybe is the way that we prioritize, and we haven't always taken bonuses, which means that we don't build the ballast of money, that we don't grow our fund here, and that is really on the applicants. It's kind of what we talked about earlier, which is sometimes taking the money that won't help you lift the program for you is more of a burden
Right,
than not taking it at all, because there's all the, so I know I've been chewing on Sia's ears are kind of.
Yeah, so am I, just a little bit, I gotta be honest with you. Other side though, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just, I would just ask all of us that with our strategic planning and our planning overall, that those kinds of things rise to the top and you keep us apprised of any opportunity. And maybe that's a legislative issue as well, in working with our local officials, our local representatives at all levels, to try and see if we can't be recognized.
And it did come up in our strategic planning
Yes.
little group that we talked about federal advocacy, that, sometimes it's not lobbying, it's just asking, hey, support these programs.
So is the money determined by, the money we get determined by the state? I know it comes from HUD, but does it go through the state and then funneled through and they decide how much we get
It's actually not, we're a direct grantee
Yeah.
of HUD.
of HUD?
Because we have
Okay.
over 200,000 in population, so we're an urban county is the term that they use.
Okay, so we would
And
have
that's
to
how
lobby
we-
our federal officials and stuff.
Well, again, our state people, it's education,
Yes,
that's all I'm doing,
right,
but you're right,
right.
the actual ask goes to the federal level.
And I also want to say, this is a great conversation for you to be here, so.
I was just thinking the same
Yeah.
thing. Great for me to be.
The 5 planets did align.
They
I
did.
think
Well,
that did just happen.
No, I did. I said I was prompting, I said, one of them.
the other.
So it does seem though, like in this instance, that Home of the Sparrow was able to take some money. They didn't get what they wanted. They wanted, you said, 6 units, and they ended up having to settle for 4.
That's correct.
Yeah, but if you look at the data, if you look at how many permanent supportive housing units we have available, and you look at the gap, that should have been fully funded. If we look at the data, if we're looking at what's available and what we need, then having 10 units of permanent supportive housing would have responded to the gap. And so that project, according to the need, could have risen to the top to be fully funded and purchase that other building. Now, I know COC is going through their strategic planning, and they are targeting permanent housing as, one of the solutions from moving from homelessness to housing. And so I think with our county strategic plan and the COC and the mental health board, you're right, everything is, like, people are having these conversations, and we are having the conversation on workforce housing. It's kind of like, when we talked about workforce, we purposely left off the people living in homelessness, because workforce housing is a difficult sell anyway, but it's aligning. So the continuum is sort of emerging as we're looking at the housing crisis in this community. I advised, I said to Rob, I don't know that I would take the 40,000 if you need 220,000. And here's the other interesting piece. Warp Core is serving the people Pioneer can't serve, or that falls outside of pioneers, right? They're
Right, yeah.
the unhoused, living rough, and so that is significant. That's, but they can't do the program well. They'll do what they can for 40, like. So yeah, that was my question. How is it that we? And I know it's a small pie. I do.
But that's the point. Do you give everybody a crumb and nobody's satisfied? Or do you give somebody something?
Or they
And
do
at least
less.
that, yeah,
They
and
do
it's a very philosophical question, but I think we need to take some time and maybe create a better direction for all of us and for everyone that we're dealing with, specifically staff, on how to go forward. So, I know that there is criteria, but maybe there needs to be an overarching philosophy stated or a policy stated. I don't know.
One of the thoughts that we had a conversation actually with our HUD rep yesterday from Region 5, and one of the thoughts is to narrow the focus for the next funding round. We would be in the process of creating the next plan, so that would be our 2025 to 2029 consolidated plan. And that's definitely going to have less activity types on it already that we're seeing are maybe too cumbersome of projects, or they're not adding value, like they're not adding the workforce housing. We do have, just in our home allocations here, we do have an allocation toward a workforce project, which is great up in Johnsburg. So they're gonna have some family units, things that we're looking for. But those, we may want to take our home funds and just narrow the focus down so that we're not doing homeowner occupied rehab, we're not doing tenant-based rental, we're doing
Right.
housing.
Right.
And home is
Acquisition,
really,
construction.
really, initially, that was what home was.
Exactly, and that's what we would, we'd like to maybe get the focus to. If you're adding the units, that's what we need. We're saying our strategic plan says we need it. There's two ways to do it, buy them or build them.
And maybe this is the opportunity response as well, is we may be shrinking but we're also advocating for additional funds. And maybe we need to invite, again, map change. It's now the time to invite people who don't really know who the heck we are, right? Because everything changed. Invite them into McHenry County, and maybe that's the presentation we make and say, this is what we're doing. We need more.
And I will tell you that actually we did visit Congressman LaHood in DC, and we advocated for our program there. He has the western part of the county. I know Congressman Foster would be another good person to advocate toward. And we did get an indication that he was in support of our programs, that they add value. So I think we have the federal support in our area for it.
And Brad Schneider, because he
Yes,
covers
the-
Oh,
Wonder Lake.
it's it's one of
Yeah.
those things, again, you're talking to somebody who's been, when you have people in a room and they're all in the room together and you make a presentation and it's compelling, they all want to be the one who delivers, right? So there's a bigger buy-in when you've got that little bit of a competition going on there, as opposed to just visiting one person who can say, yeah, I support this, and you walk out and I support it.
Yeah, and we have 3 people in Congress, Schakowsky,
Yeah,
Schneider,
yeah.
and Foster for McHenry County.
Right.
So, wow.
That's it, exactly.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, Hans, it was very telling, that document that Brandon put together. Remember when we asked, at the first strategy of the COC, we asked for data. What does it look like really? And we're thin. We're so thin that when these 3,300 people fall off that treasury funding, I don't know, I am not a catastrophic person, but the housing authority can't handle them. They don't have any units. We don't have, I don't know where they'll go. I don't. And so I don't
They'll be
think-
tenting somewhere, Lou.
Huh?
They'll be tenting somewhere.
That are couch surfing or doubled up or tripled up or
Is that May 1st?
Huh?
When does that happen? Is that May 1st?
June 30th it runs out, right?
The
Treasury allocation.
The Treasury, no, the ERA 2 is continuing, so we did give an allocation to Home and Sparrow to continue.
But very
to
little.
To next March, yeah.
Yeah,
There's
it's what?
250,000.
Yeah, that's like nothing for rent subsidy. That's nothing in this
It'll
county.
go very
So I asked Hans the question, what would it take? Funding
How much?
wise.
I don't wanna hear that
Guess
number.
at what he said.
Oh, well, so what what the advocacy has been is to reauthorize both CDBG and home. And so with that reauthorization, for home, they currently fund it at about 1.35 billion. So I'm just looking at national levels, what trickles down to us is at 1.35, we're at about 750,000 depending on the year. We would be looking at a minimum level that's being advocated for is 5 billion. So that's triple. It's a similar situation for CDBG. I think I told you yesterday 10 billion.
Yes.
But they're pushing for something around 8.6, 8.7. And that's to look at, this program started in 1974. We've added all these new grantees that have gotten to 200,000. In the late 70s, we added all the states to the program, but the funding level is not keeping up with all of those things and inflation.
So, my friends, for us to support things like that, you have to get, obviously, the buy-in, but the background is then to also give those people who advocate for us for additional funds the cover they need with their constituents when they talk about more money. See, it's a continuum as well. I was gonna say it's a game, it's not a game, but it's an understanding. There's always quid pro quo. So, again, we need to highlight with our individuals why this is so important and what it does for the community, which is to elevate the quality of life that you have where you live. Can I ask one last stupid question?
You can ask anything.
Why do these, I don't understand, why do they come to public health?
That was a change that was made in, I think,
I asked
20.
that.
I know you did, I am asking
In
again, because I never got an
2017.
answer, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, so we had Public Health and Human Services previously in Planning and Development. So we used to report to Planning and Development. When we changed it over to PHCS, the community word in there was sort of the thought process behind the change of these grants shifting all over to PHCS. Senior Services had always gone to PHHS. So that shift just moved them all into one committee rather than two. We were split previously.
And
Yeah,
so-
but that doesn't really make sense to me.
Well, we can talk about that, but if it does, I need to be better educated, because my first comment was, I don't know where, I can guess, but I don't have the details, and we talked. I guess I need more info. I'm approving something, and I really didn't have any hand in any of it. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and the other thing is, I also think, I don't want to question the work of the commission. 'Cause
Me
I know
either.
these are volunteers, they come and I know it's a lot of work being on those commissions.
Plus,
If
it
you
goes to
read-
finance, doesn't it, too? I mean, from an economic perspective, which is my only concern. I mean, if the
Yeah.
commission recommends, I'm good, but
But
sometimes we have the
the
money.
idea that, and I don't know, I'm speaking from former experience, and actually what would be said, it's better to give everybody something than give a large allocation, and I disagree with that. I think that, because then you hobble along trying to fit little, you have to find other funding and.
The metric of that is that more failures occur when you do that
Well, you
than
don't
successes.
get to fully actualize the funding in the
Right.
way that you want to.
Right.
And then in not-for-profits, it falls on staff to make up that gap. And in smaller not-for-profits who don't have development officers, they take on the extra task of writing grants and doing fundraising, which detracts from their primary mission. Either these are important issues to us, and we want to make it easier for them to get to the finish line and provide the service, or, otherwise they're always chasing the money, and they can't, chasing the mission, you don't want to say it comes secondary, but if you can't fund the mission, you can't promote the mission. And I know from experience, outreach to people who are unhoused is hard work. It is grinding, and I wouldn't want them to worry about raising their money. I just want them to, so yes, I appreciate this conversation, because I was curious about how the allocations got
Yeah,
made.
and we started this conversation
Before.
after allocations. It was brought up that, there are a lot of people asking for money, and how can we fully fund projects that really mean something. You know, there were some projects that weren't funded, but again, the asks were just tremendous compared to what we had to allocate. So I appreciate the questions then coming over to here, because it just reinforces what, you know, we had kind of discussed at the end of that process, and it was a long process. And it was a difficult process. There are a lot of great programs out there, and to not be able to fund them with what they need was, you know, at times it's heartbreaking, you know, because you want to see these programs succeed. There are so many people that need these programs.
Well, and
Yeah.
communities with low-income areas that don't have the tax base to do the
Right.
infrastructure work. This is almost the only place they have to come
Right.
to get some of that infrastructure.
So, you know, I'll jump future topics. Maybe this could be a conversation when you're not intimately engaged in actually having to go through all. Maybe we can, you know, put that on the agenda for some time and just have kind of a brainstorming conversation about what needs to happen or where we need to go as part of the, could we do that maybe too? I'm looking at Peter now too.
So I'd like to, first of all, I think one thing this shows is that we have wonderful and numerous nonprofits. So our county has a lot of benefits there. But we also have to look, I think it's important, if, not that it's our job, but make sure there's not duplicate services. So that we're funding here and here and here. And so that would, I don't know how we go about that, but I think that's important because we don't want to piecemeal, you know, things if everything can come under one umbrella. The other thing, so two things. First, when you were asking for more information, were you asking for like how much people asked?
Who asked how much?
Yeah.
What we did?
Like that
what,
spreadsheet.
You know, that's
The final
all.
spreadsheet that you guys end up with, that would be.
I can just hear somebody in my community, and again, I'm lovely Eric, we did chat. I mean, somebody asked me, why did you do this and you do this? And I said, you know, because the commission told us we should.
I mean, we could
That's
go
such a-
back and watch those 8 hours of meetings, but.
Which I'm gonna be very honest, that ain't gonna happen in my life.
I know.
So, you know, if there could be just a summary of what was considered, who did, why, how they connect, I mean, I think it would give us a little bit, plus then it allows us to have focused conversations in the future about where all of this is, and we can give you better direction too.
Oh,
So
that-
I would just.
That would be very easy to pull together the staff synopses. I think that
Yeah,
would be a
yeah.
pretty easy description. So it's just gonna say, name a project, organization, how many people is this assisting, and what is it doing? It's
Do you
pretty
rank
easy.
them?
Do we
Do you
don't?
have a
any-
ranking?
We used to.
Yeah, I know, because it came up when I was on the commission, we put a ranking system in place, and so the staff would score. And it was aligned to the existing strategic plan at the time. And so we were encouraged then to choose or allocate based on the ranking. Now, if there was a significant reason to.
I remember that now
Yeah,
that you
to
said that. I
depart
do
from the
remember
ranking.
that.
Yeah, we could do it, but mostly,
I don't think that's a bad idea.
Well, it
I mean,
wasn't a bad
We do it for ARPA.
Yeah,
I
and
mean-
I again, I would just say that, and again, two things. You've got a whole brand-new board with a lot of new people, so you're gonna get a lot of this. Whereas, I would say in previous years, you had a lot of returning people who knew, you know, don't bother me, I already know, a lot of new we don't, right? So, that's one of the reasons for the additional information. But the ranking, we ran into problems with people saying the favorites, and so they didn't like the ranking. So again, it's narrative and how you present. This is important because we have an overarching goal that we want to meet, and that's why we're doing this. But
Well, and
but
if
again,
that-
it's just dialogue and communication, so people know why you're doing what you're doing. I thought we did great with ARPA. I
Yeah.
thought that was a really good message we gave to the community.
well, and if a program had to demonstrate that they met one of the components of the plan. So they just couldn't say, oh, we're gonna do, I mean, they had to demonstrate in the application that their application actually met and they got scored. Like, so if it fully met, I don't remember what it was, if they only met it a little bit, they got a lower score. And then I think, you know, the other problem
still
that we
talking.
ran into initially was that when you're an entitlement program, you compete internally, you don't compete at the state level anymore. The money comes to your entitlement district. All the rehab projects, Pioneer, all the upgrades to group, everything got thrown in that money. New programming was, so we have some rehab in there. It doesn't really help new programming, but you do have to maintain housing properties. And so then out of that CDBG allocation comes, right, the rehab money. And I think it's, and you know, Trey, I mean, I think, how do you say no to Pioneer Rehab for the group home that houses 6 people? It's gotta be
And it's
rehab.
air
It's in the
conditioning,
neighborhood.
right, or whatever it is, yeah, that you have to, yeah.
Yeah, and I wonder, is there any way to pull those out of? No, they can't apply someplace else, can they?
They typically can't for those types
Yes,
of projects.
There's nothing, you know.
Delineated funders for those. I mean, maybe at the state level these days, you've been seeing some things come in for new programs, but in the past, since I've been here 7 years, there's not really been much from the state level for those kinds of
Can
things.
I ask one favor? So we see these come through, whether it's CDBG, home, CDBG, CV, Senior Services Grant Commission, which we see them piecemeal. I would love to have a sheet that says how much we get for the program, for the programs for the year. So how much you're estimating that the county gets. Because it's hard to keep track of who gets what. So and I know this is a lot of work, so I'm not expecting it tomorrow or even,
That should be part of the broader conversation, but
Yes.
you're right, that'll
So-
give us an idea.
So
Yeah.
maybe how much we get as a county for each of these programs, and then maybe a recap of who gets what out of all the programs too at the end of the year. Because it's just, I mean, I
It's
would
hard to
love to
keep it
just
all.
be able to answer those questions when people ask.
Oh, sure, that would be actually pretty easy to do.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
so just be sort of restating what we have here, I think it may be helpful to have something like that as a cover and then have the title of the project, et cetera, like I mentioned
Yes.
before, with a brief description, and how many individuals it helps. I think that would give you everything you need. You could have it in your phone if somebody asks you, like, let me pull up the PDF, that kind of thing. I think we can definitely do that.
It would be good also if we had some kind of historical perspective to see, because I heard someone mention, are we playing favorites with certain, so to maybe look over a 5-year period, if that would be easy to do.
That would be easy to do.
Okay,
We have a staff
wonderful.
person that has, she's very good at compiling information like that together, so she'll get
That
it
would
done
just
for
be a
us.
spreadsheet, we wouldn't have to have the narrative for each of those too.
Absolutely, absolutely, just bottom line.
Okay.
Thank you.
And from sitting in an executive director chair, what you said about, we all know, no program gets fully funded by one funder. You have to go, you put it together with different funders. But if I had a new program and I was coming to CDBG and I wanted you to fully fund it, you could give me 2 years. Give me 2 years to get it on the ground, and with the understanding that I would begin to move it into a more self-sustaining program at year 3. And one of the questions would be, how will you reduce your dependency on this funding at year 3? What are you willing to do to make that happen? Because, you know, hobbling a new program on an underfunded, that's really that's tough.
Well, and a lot of times the new programs don't even get funded because they're brand new.
Exactly, so then we don't get innovation.
You're on track.
We miss that stuff.
Because
Yeah.
if you wouldn't have pulled them up,
Yeah. Oh, okay, Eric's back.
Eric's very
I know,
happy.
I apologize.
No, don't apologize, we're just teasing you.
No, I chose this profession. I apologize.
Are you apologizing for choosing the profession? or-
Yes.
Apologizing for being an attorney.
I think we're going to we're gonna move to old business,
Oh.
if you don't mind
No.
hanging out. I know
Yeah.
you and I are getting together later, just so Scott can maybe get back to
Work?
A month ago, it was sort of on the same topic in some respects, but the question was arising about how are seniors without transportation services getting by, and and more notably, what options are available. We knew our transportation guru, Scott, was not at the table, and somebody said, we need to get Scott here next week. I immediately left the meeting and emailed Scott, and I said, be here next month. You know, we published an agenda without him on it, and he reminded me, so thank you, Scott. But I appreciate, Scott being here, and just, so we want to talk about that. What are seniors doing without owning or being able to drive their own car?
So, thank you for inviting me here today. I'm sure everybody knows me, but I'm Scott Hennings. I'm the Assistant Director of Transportation at the County DOT. I didn't really prepare anything. I thought we could maybe just have a conversation and talk through questions you might have. Just to kind of get the conversation started, though, everybody knows the county operates the MC Ride Dollar Ride program. And when it comes to transportation, that is really the 800-pound gorilla in the room in McHenry County. People think of PACE service and most people think of just a bus that runs on a schedule. But really, that type of fixed route transit service is only about 20% of the overall bus service in the county. The other 80% is dial-a-ride, where you have to call ahead, schedule your trip, they come to your door and pick you up and take you ready to go. So most seniors, that's the service they're using, just because they might not be able to walk to the nearest bus stop. Even if they can, maybe that bus doesn't go where they need it to go, and that's why MC Ride comes in handy. Related to the Senior Grant Commission, I just wanted to remind, because we have some new members here, the DOT used to apply and receive funding through the Senior Services Grant Commission. When I first started in 2012, we had applied for, I think, $500,000 in 2012, $400,000 to $500,000. And they fully funded our request at the time, but over the next 3 or 4 years, from 2013 to 2015, every single year, the Senior Services Grant Commission provided less and less funding. And I think in 2015, we asked for $1 million in Senior Grant Commission funding, and they gave us $70,000. So to the point we raised earlier.
See?
And
What were you doing with that funding? Like what?
we were using that funding to provide transportation for senior citizens.
And how?
So about half of our rides are for people over the age of 60. So the program today is a $2.6 million program. So if you kind of back that out, about $1.3 million per year is spent on senior citizens on this program. Somewhere between 1 and 1.5 million. I could get the exact numbers if that was necessary, but really that's how we did it. We would calculate a cost per trip for the average for the program itself over a year. We'd multiply that times the number of senior citizen trips provided, and that's how much we would ask for every year from the Senior Grant Commission. And when we were getting $500,000 a year, it was worth our time and effort to go through the application process, to do the quarterly reporting. But to be honest, $70,000 on a $2 million program.
It's like 2 quarters.
Exactly. And plus, on top of that, the DOT is fortunate we have other funding sources to help pay for this program. So us giving up $70,000 is not.
What was the rationale for the decrease?
Because they have other funding sources that they can tap into, and there was a decision to utilize that money for other programs. Yes?
There was a lot of that discussion. DOT doesn't need this money. And even though transportation is the number one thing the Senior Services Grant Commission was created to fund, there was just this perception that because it's DOT asking for it, we don't need the funding for it.
Scott, explain where you get the other funding and how that works and how the levels made,
So it's changed over the years, but I'll go over how we fund the program today, because that's the most relevant. The program, like I said, it's about a $2.6 million program. Half of that is funded by PACE. Okay, PACE Bus funds the program through, every time you buy something in the store, you pay RTA sales tax. And RTA sales tax is provided to PACE and the other service boards, CTA, Metra, RTA. And PACE pays for half of that program through RTA sales tax. The other half of the program is funded by the county, and we utilize our RTA sales tax. So we also receive about $12 million per year in RTA sales tax, we spend just over $1 million, $1.5 million of that on this program.
And again, for clarity, McHenry County decided to do that. It was permissive by the state that you can initiate that tax. It was, no?
It was not permissive.
The state did that?
Yeah, the state said in 2008, there shall be a quarter cent of the RTA sales tax that goes to the county for transportation purposes
Okay.
or public safety. We've only used it for transportation, but there was no vote on it.
Okay.
It came.
It came from the state then. All right, I apologize.
So
I
the
thought
one
it was a
question-
permissive, because I thought DuPage didn't want, no, DuPage doesn't
They
use it.
didn't want it for public transportation, they want it for public safety.
That's correct, and that's why it was.
Thank
Thank you. Old memory, but yeah, got it. I was trying to make the difference between counties. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay, and like I said, when I first started 10 years ago, we were requiring that cities and townships that were part of this program, they pay into it. We've since gotten rid of that, so we've actually saved cities and townships across the entire county hundreds of thousands of dollars every single year, because the county has not only stepped up with a higher contribution ourselves, but we were able to go after and receive federal grants from the RTA to kind of help subsidize the program federally as well. So that's kind of an it's a less understood part of the program and the changes that have occurred over the last decade, but it's a real success story. The fact that we were able to reduce taxes in cities and townships by not requiring that local contribution. Back before MC Ride was created, Crystal Lake, just alone, Crystal Lake, they had a dollar ride. They were spending, I think, over $500,000 per year, just the city, for their Crystal Lake Dollar Ride program. They spend $0 today. And they have a better level of service than they did back in 2010 when this program first started, because now their residents can go anywhere. They used to have to just stay within Crystal Lake.
How much was Crystal Lake spending?
They were spending about $500,000 per year, just staying within their city limits.
And what do they spend?
$0. They're not paying anything, and that's because the county stepped up to play a leadership role, and we were able to leverage additional PACE funding and federal funding to reduce the cost to our local cities and townships. So it's kind of off
I have
topic.
a question. So you said we get 12 million from the RTA sales tax,
Correct.
but we only using 1.6 of that for, so what's happening with the other?
For MC Ride, we spend about $1.6 million.
Okay, because we have this really big gap in transportation that comes up in just about every meeting we sit down in.
Every committee,
And-
every meeting,
yes,
every,
yes. It's coming up for everybody. And
It
so
is.
if we're only using 1.6 of that for actual transportation.
For public transportation,
For
yes.
public
The other-
transportation, what's happening with the rest of that money? And
Yeah.
why aren't we using more of it for, now I know we've added some rides recently, we stepped that up, but
Yeah.
what's the plan for future? Because if we're sitting on money that we could be
Not
using.
sitting on it.
Yeah, and
Okay,
And I'll
Peter
say-
wants to say something.
Well, no,
Okay.
I'll let Scott answer, he'll do better, but we're not sitting on it.
no, we're not
So
sitting on it.
so it's a matter of how we're allocating it.
So we the other 11 million per year is spent on bridges, on roads, resurfacing program, on major capital projects that the DOT undertakes. So those are all, that funding is going to good use. It's keeping our bridges open and safe for agricultural vehicles. It's going to resurface our roads in neighborhoods and things like that. So it's still being spent on transportation. It's not being spent on bus service.
Okay.
And so I just want to make sure everybody
But
understands.
have we thought about shifting that balance?
Well, that balance has increased dramatically.
Okay.
We used to only spend, I think, $250,000. When I first started in 2012, of the RTA sales tax, we spent under $500,000 per year on MC Ride, on the Dollar Ride program.
And we spend, all of the RTA counties get the RTA sales tax. We spend a far higher percentage of our RTA sales tax on public transportation than any other county. I mean, all the counties have some sort of a dollar right now.
We seem to
Ours
have a
is-
bigger
ours is-
problem with
Well, we spend a
transportation.
far higher
Well,
percentage
yeah, we have
because we
less
just don't get as
options.
much.
Yeah.
We have less retail activity, we have less people, so we're generating a lot less money from the RTA sales tax, yet we're spending a higher percentage of that on public transportation and less on roads.
Both a higher percentage and a higher amount as an absolute value. Even you look at DuPage County, they're not spending near as much as we are on public transportation. And they're 3 times, 4 times the size as
But
McHenry County.
it's easier to get from point A to point B in DuPage County,
Yeah.
also in Lake County.
It is.
Also in Cook,
Well, and I'm
is
glad-
what I'm saying.
No, totally, and I totally agree. And I would point to the fact that PACE has made more investments in those counties than they have out here. Let's not forget, the county is not the transit agency. We've stepped up to fill a hole, a gap that existed, and I think we did a good job doing that. But PACE is the ultimate, they have the ultimate responsibility to provide bus service in McHenry County,
So
not
we
the
have to
county.
play nicer, is that what you're saying?
We play pretty nice with PACE. And kudos to Erin Smith, our PACE director.
Yeah.
She's been advocating for additional
Oh,
services.
yeah, I know Erin personally, she's amazing.
And we have a long way to go, don't get me wrong, but we are doing, as Pete said, way more than any other county in the Chicagoland region to provide transit service. And yes, we still have people, the Transportation Committee in particular, we have people coming to our committee every single meeting advocating for more transportation service. However, we were doing a lot as it is.
And the county has been really actively engaged for the last, I can speak to that, trying to address all of those concerns. Not a new problem, one that just continually comes back up as the county grows. And don't forget, people made plans when they developed each of their individual municipalities about what it looks like and how it doesn't have that kind of service. So again, I know that there's an issue and I know that we need to try and do it, but we also have to remember we have to stay in our lanes, and decisions were made that had consequences, and we can't be the problem solvers for everything.
Yeah, the reason PACE will say that why they don't have more buses out here, and PACE has told me this many times, is because it's near impossible to provide bus service in McHenry County with our low-density development patterns.
That's
The
what
way
I'm
we-
talking
The way
about.
we've built our neighborhoods is not conducive to bus service.
Yeah.
And that's the reason the county was so aggressive in expanding the Dial-A-Ride program, was because you have to live with what you've built. And we've built a county that's not very
Conscientiously.
transit-friendly.
So, but this also, so the court transportation is another form of transportation.
Mhm.
And that, we sort of got torn apart at the county board, but it's part of the transportation plan for the county. The veterans who transport to Jim Lovell, you have a van, that's another part of the transportation plan. It does transport McHenry County citizens. So the specialized populations who are transporting their clients, it would give us a much a richer vision of who's doing what around transportation in addition to you in McHenry County. What is that? It's kind of to Kelly's thing about the whole allocation. Like, so if you're getting some money from senior services and you're doing some transporting, and I happen to know that PACE now has a program for vehicle acquisition for not-for-profits. Robust, that was the word, thank you, I was having a super moment here. It probably looks like we're spending more on transportation in the county than just the DOT stuff.
Well, don't forget, DOT, we fund the MC Ride program, but we also used to fund the VAC. We gave them money through the RTA sales tax for their bus fuel purchases. We fund the courts program that Lou just talked about. That's $50,000 this year. We also fund Senior Care Volunteer Network. That we give them $70,000 per year from our RTA sales tax for their transportation program.
Yes.
So those are all, we consider all of those programs as our programs, just being operated by other parties, because we are funding those programs. And without our funds, without the county's funds, those programs wouldn't be able to do what they do today.
Yeah.
Senior Care Volunteer Network in particular is a really good example of us thinking outside the bus, so to speak, and giving money. Yeah, I've been waiting for that for a long time.
In the minutes.
But to be clear, I mean, it's a really innovative program. No other county in Northeast Illinois is doing something like that, giving public dollars to a private nonprofit to provide volunteer transportation for senior citizens. I mean, that's pretty cool. We've been doing it for over a decade, and it's grown. We used to give them, I think, only $40,000 per year, and that's grown every year because they've demonstrated that they can spend it efficiently, more efficiently on a cost per trip basis than our bus program can do.
So I have a question. You mentioned VA. So the bus that comes and takes veterans to North Chicago once a week before COVID, I knew every Tuesday. Do you fund that?
So we used to. I think we stopped giving Mike some money a few years ago.
Yeah, we had an abundance of money, and
Yeah.
there was other agencies that desperately needed it.
And just to give a little history on that, I think it was 2011, 2012, we did what was called, we started a transit grant program. So the DOT we had a call for projects. We invited nonprofits, governments to come to us and put in applications for funding for public transportation programs that they operate. And the VAC and Senior Care Volunteer Network, they came in with a joint application whereby Senior Care Volunteer Network would get veterans to designated pickup points where they would be picked up by the VAC, and we would fund both the VAC vans as well as the Senior Care Volunteer Network transportation. So that was a really good example of cooperation between government and nonprofits, and we funded it as the DOT. So we have our hands in a lot of things, and we're happy to do an inventory to kind of get this all on paper and put it out there. But yeah.
Well, it helps us when we talk to constituents about their tax bills.
Exactly.
And sales tax, for us to say, you know, we're a different we're kind of a hybrid county. We have some very dense areas that are easily serviced, but then we have these rural areas which you can't send a bus out there. There's no way. So you have to have these direct. So we have a hybrid transportation system that we're building. If I can say that to constituents when they talk about their property taxes, like here's what you are paying for, or when they say, I was one of them, like what's up with transportation in this county? And now I understand it a little better. And so for us to be out there in our districts, to be able to say that, and we may have to continue to look at ways that transportation looks very different here. I mean, I get it.
Well, I don't know how many people know this, but Ed Gallagher from PACE was at Workforce Network, and they have a program to help carpoolers. So if there are 3 or 4 people, they will give you a van. I mean, literally give you a van.
Did that with Nezra,
And that they can carpool to and from work, and they pay a certain amount. I think they pay I don't know if they pay the gas, but they pay all the maintenance and everything. And then whoever is the driver has to have, go through some training and have special insurance, but they can also use that for a portion of personal need if needed. So it's another program that we can just add on up to this too.
Absolutely.
And
Go ahead.
I apologize. I just have a couple questions. So Crystal Lake used to spend $500,000. Now they spend $0. Did that occur with any other municipalities?
Every
that you're aware of?
municipality. So
Yeah.
not every, but all the major municipalities, the large ones. So Crystal Lake had their own bus program. Woodstock, McHenry, Harvard, Marengo. They all had their own bus program that stayed within their own corporate limits. As we expanded the MC Ride program, initially it was just the 3 largest, McHenry, Woodstock, and Crystal Lake. They were the first 3 cities to jump with the county to try this MC Ride pilot program. And we demonstrated success with those 3 municipalities. So Harvard and Marengo came on a little later, I think in 2015. They got rid of their bus programs and joined our county-wide program. So over the years it's expanded, but those 5 municipalities in particular have seen the largest cost savings. But even townships as well.
Right?
Yeah, I was just going to get to that, Pete. Thank you for coming on. So I worked with back with Supervisor Kearns, who used to be with Grafton Township. He was one of the first townships to sort of eliminate his bus program and join the county's bus program because he saw cost savings there. Same thing with Nunda Township. Mike Lesperance at the time decided to stop running his bus program. So Yeah, and then obviously Greenwood and Dorr, they were one of the early townships that didn't have their own bus program, but saw us as an opportunity to provide transportation to seniors living in those townships as well. So they sort of bought into the program without having to start their own bus program. So we've done so much to not only just consolidate what's out there, and we're not there yet with getting rid of all of these other programs. So Algonquin still has their bus program. McHenry Township, Richmond and Burton have their own. And I think the Senior Services Grant Commission funds some of those programs. However, those are, we've done quite a bit to sort of reduce costs by increasing the efficiencies from scale. As you get bigger, it's cheaper to do it.
And now the municipalities or the townships themselves, they don't actually contribute to this program whatsoever then?
Well, they do through county taxes, right? So
Their usual.
Correct.
tax,
So
but there was no.
There used to be. So in 2015, we've changed it so much over the years. So in 2020, we expanded countywide. And at that point, we got rid of all local, municipal, and township contributions. But up from 2012 to 2020, there was it used to be per trip. We would charge the cities based on the number of trips provided within their city, and the same thing with the township. And then in 2015, we moved from that model to charging them a per capita fee per year or per month. So the larger cities paid more than the smaller cities. And then in 2020, when we went countywide, the issue we came up against was we had some cities that were paying. So we had 11 or 12 cities that were part of this program, but we had 11 or 12 cities that didn't want to be part of the program. But the county board still wanted to move this program countywide. And so we had this choice to make. Do we give this for free to cities who don't want to pay for it while we're still charging some that are paying? And what does that say as far as fairness goes, right? And so we ultimately made the decision to say, we're going to stop charging the cities altogether. And the county is just going to pay for that along with federal grants that we receive.
And I think Scott coached us all at the time, being able to say, we're serving everyone, being a countywide program made us more competitive for grants.
Well, it was silly because we had buses that would travel through cities, but they couldn't stop there because that city didn't want to be part of it. And it was just silly for us. It was silly for me having to spend hours on the phone with people trying to explain why we couldn't stop in Lake in the Hills. And they wanted to get to Costco, and they lived in Crystal Lake, and they just couldn't understand why.
Would there not be a little stop there north of there?
Yeah, you can walk from.
We'll get you to the border.
Yeah, we used to do. It's funny, but we used to do something exactly that. We would drop people at the border of
I-
Crystal Lake, and they would walk to Costco because Crystal Lake and Hills didn't want to be part of this program. So these are the challenges that we've overcome.
And I'm sorry, I'm rapid firing you questions,
That's okay.
but Pete just said having a countywide, service area made us more competitive for federal grants. Have we seen like a substantial increase in federal grants or
We have.
state grants because
So
of that?
In fact, you'll see at the next committee of the whole on the agenda, there's a resolution authorizing us to apply for additional, it's called Section 5310 grant funding from the RTA. We used to receive, I think, $250,000 per year to help fund trips for seniors and people with disabilities. And then over the years, and you'll see on this upcoming resolution, we're asking for $750,000 per year for the next 2 years, so $1.5 million total. So yes, our grant applications have been more successful. We've asked for more and we've received more. And the RTA loves us because we spend the money down really efficiently and very, very quickly. So it's been great. And while, again, going back to the Senior Grant Commission, we don't necessarily need to apply for senior grant dollars. I would appreciate if the Senior Grant Commission could take a look at whether funding township programs like Richmond, Burton, and McHenry is furthering the aims of coordination and consolidation, or if it's actually cutting against those aims. And I don't want to take a position either way, but I think they do good work. I'm not here to kind of bash Richmond, Burton, or McHenry. I think people that rely on the services feel like they're needed. But the county also has its own program that we're funding every single year. And right now, whether we want to say it or not, those are duplicative services. They're operating in the same area, doing roughly the same thing, with slight differences.
Well, it might give more money to look at those senior gaps. Like we know that we're coming up on gaps for senior housing and, you know, nursing home care, like all of that is looming. So Kelly, to Kelly's comment about duplication of funding, it might feel harsh for them to hear that, but that might be a funding decision that's made if the Senior Grants Commission prioritizes what we're gonna be looking at in the next 2 years, you know? Because really, I would love to give everybody money, but, you know, I have none personally, and I don't sit on, it's not efficient to do that. And, the other thing I wanted to ask, is there is an environmental benefit to keeping cars off the road?
There is, but if you'll allow me to sort of pontificate a little bit.
Oh, sure, go right. You've been doing it for a while.
I'm sorry about that.
No,
That's
And
okay,
cut
we
me off.
enjoy it.
Please
We
cut me
do.
off if I go too far. You know, in urban areas, in the city of Chicago, the CTA keeps cars off the road. Metro keeps cars off the road. There's no doubt about that. The fact that Metro exists in McHenry County means we have less congestion in McHenry County, by far. The PACE services, because they're really only serving people who have no other option, they wouldn't, it's not like people that are riding MC Ride today would hop in their car to go to work.
Okay.
They're riding MC Ride because they can't drive for whatever reason, mostly disability or other related, or income. And it's, so I think you're right in certain areas, but not in McHenry County.
Okay, thanks.
Well, I have a quick question going back to the, just looking at cost per ride. And you mentioned Algonquin Township, McHenry Township, Cushman Burton. They have their own bus services.
Correct.
Do we have metrics that say, okay, their cost per ride is X versus the countywide program?
So we track our cost per ride every single month to a great extent. We've got very good data over 10 years on not only the bus cost per ride, but we have taxis operating on our program too. So we track those separately. I know Hans, as part of the application process, asks cities, or asks the townships what their cost per rides are. Or they ask for cost figures and they ask for ridership figures. He can calculate that on his end. We used to actually, the townships used to give us this information as well, the DOT, so we could track it on their behalf, just to kind of compare. But a few years ago, they stopped doing that for whatever reason. I don't have current data, but I would guess our program is more cost effective on a per ride basis, just because, again, if our bus operating in McHenry Township needs to pick up somebody just over the border en route to pick up somebody else, we can do that. But at McHenry Township, they're sort of limited in who they can pick up, and it's just, you can fit more people on the bus when you have a larger service area versus when you're serving a smaller service area.
And what is the cost per ride for the bus? I don't need an exact figure. I'm not going to hold you to it,
No, it's okay.
but for the bus and for the taxi.
So I'm going to give you two answers to that question.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you a pre-COVID answer and a
All right.
post-COVID answer.
Yeah, please do.
Because those are very different. Pre-COVID, our cost per trip, total program was about $20 a trip, $19-20 a trip.
And that's for the bus?
That was total. So the
Total,
buses,
okay.
the buses were actually a little less, and the taxis were a little bit more. And the
Okay.
reason for that is Pace dispatches taxis to pick people up if they're located in areas that are more rural in nature. So if you live on the outskirts of town, maybe out in Marengo Township, and you want to get to Crystal Lake, they're not going to send a big bus to pick you up. They'll dispatch a taxi if they can, if the person doesn't have any mobility limitations. So inherently, those trips are more expensive than the shorter trips are. So, but roughly it was about $19-20 a trip
So
in
this is
2019.
per person even on the bus?
This is correct. On the bus, it was like $18 a trip.
Okay.
And on taxis, it was probably $25.
But when you
So that's
But
the
when you-
average cost.
An average cost was
That includes,
$19-20.
that includes everything,
but
right?
when you say per trip, you mean per person per trip, right? Per
Correct.
person transported.
Per trip, because
Okay.
yeah, one trip is one person transported. In our-
0.8.
Okay.
So one way.
Correct,
Got
one
it.
way. That's correct. And to be clear, the rider would pay about 10% of that cost. Our fare box recovery is roughly, it used to be 10%, now it's dipped below that, somewhere closer to 7 or 8% fare box recovery. That means the taxpayers are paying the 92% of that trip cost.
And what's the percentage again, just roughly, of how many people utilize the bus or transport on the bus compared to those taxis?
About 95% of our trips are on buses.
Bus,
Yeah.
okay. And what's the total cost expended to taxis?
The total cost for taxis?
Yeah.
I can get that for you here, right? I have
Alright,
the information
thank
for
you.
here.
And-
So before I answer that though, I'm gonna say post-COVID, and this is important, COVID has really disrupted transit, as everybody knows. Metro ridership is still well below pre-pandemic numbers. And the same thing with Dollar Ride too. I mean, we've seen less of a decline than CTA and Metro has, but we're still at about 80% of what we saw pre-pandemic. So we're about 86,000 rides in 2022. Pre-pandemic, we were at 106,000 trips in 2019, and we were going up fast. We were expecting to be somewhere in the 115, 120,000 trips per year in 2020 had the pandemic not hit, and we're still at 86 now. Because of that, because the ridership has declined, our cost per trip has gone up. Because you have less people, you can put less people on the bus, especially when Pace was limiting rides to only one passenger per bus for social distancing reasons. So what used to be 2 passengers getting a trip, splitting the cost, now it's 1 passenger. So what we've seen is since the pandemic, and it still holds today, our cost per trip is roughly $29, $30 a trip today, compared to 19 or 20 pre-pandemic. So it's gone up substantially, and I don't see any, because of the labor market tightening and fuel prices having gone up, I don't see it coming back down to that $19 or $20 a trip. Hopefully it doesn't continue to grow, but I think the new normal is going to be around that $30 per trip range, which is still below what the townships are providing today.
So the decline in utilization, is that tied to people being afraid to get on a bus with other people?
I wish I had a good answer. We don't know
Okay.
exactly. I mean, I could speculate, but
Can you?
But it also has to do with the fact that people are now home. And so they're available to other members of their family to do more because they're not going into the office. So there's, again, more options,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
I think it's a little bit of everything. I think
Okay.
part of it is
I do too.
some worry about being around, especially because, I mean, again, these are the most vulnerable citizens in the county that are using this program. A lot of them have health issues, and if they're still concerned about COVID-19 and, they might want to avoid taking unnecessary trips. Maybe they did take trips that they're foregoing today. I think part of it is you've seen that as the economy gets better, our ridership goes down because people can purchase a vehicle if they couldn't afford one during bad economic times. During good economic times, maybe they can scrape together enough, or they can put gas in the tank to be able to get to work. Keep in mind, 40% of our trips are for work. So that's about 40,000 trips a year we're giving to and from work. And if this program were not in existence, those are trips that couldn't be provided. Those are people not getting to work every day.
That's pretty amazing.
So I think there's a little bit of every reason why the ridership is still
Okay.
down.
So, in those ridership numbers and the cost per trip, that's for just the dial-a-ride in general?
Correct.
And that's available, so if I had to come to this meeting and my daughters, and this does happen, take all the cars and I go out and there's no car in my driveway, I can't just, I gotta schedule, number one, I can't just call them.
You'd have to at least try calling yesterday, right?
Yeah.
If you woke up today and you didn't have a car,
Yeah.
you'd probably be out of luck.
Okay.
You couldn't get to this meeting.
I call my neighbor Ken, he probably have.
Unless you call it Uber or
Yeah,
a taxi.
Well, and Uber
Yeah,
technology.
no excuses, Mike.
Technology in general is another reason why I think ridership has stayed down, right?
Right.
People, even though Uber and Lyft is way more expensive, you're gonna pay 10 times as much as this program. It's much more convenient than this program is. So some people, if they can afford to take an Uber or Lyft maybe to school, we got a lot of MCC students that take this program, but we've heard that they would much rather take an Uber if they could afford to do that every day. So I think there's some of that too, as why the ridership has been suppressed over the years.
So there's no effective, someone calls up and says, I need a ride, you give them a ride? There's no,
Sometimes if somebody calls in the morning for a ride that afternoon, if the stars align or the planets align.
Right. And I'm saying just in general.
In general, no, you need to call ahead.
Well, right, no, what I'm saying, but you can schedule a ride, it's not, there's no pre-qualification for a car
No.
that shows that I'm low income, I don't have a car, it's,
There is not.
No.
Eric needed a ride from here to the courthouse.
Eric could try getting a ride from here to the courthouse. However, I think Eric would try it, and he'd find that, I'm not doing that again.
I might miss court by about 24 hours.
Yeah. And again, I love this program. I think it's a great program. It's doing a lot of good. But I think for anyone that has a choice,
They're not gonna use it.
they're
It's
not
gonna
going to
be
use
a
it.
last
But
resort.
that's the point. The program, it really isn't for people who have a choice. It's
Exactly.
supposed to fill a gap for people who
Sure.
have no other option.
And I want to say, to previous county boards, previous committees have asked me to look at income limiting this program, making it only available if you're under a certain income. And I said the same thing. I'm like, listen, the people that use this are low income. We don't ask them for that, but they wouldn't be riding this if they
If
had
they
other
had
options
other
at their disposal. So it's kind of an unnecessary hurdle
Well,
to have to
it's
go through.
also, it's a service the county provides to its constituents for whatever reason. I mean, if I wanted to call Dial a Ride, it's not about my income, it's about transportation. And I think then we can say, without eliminating people, McHenry County does its very best to provide transportation options to everyone in the county, no matter. That's like a feather in our cap.
Well, and part of it, where I sit at a DOT, right, most of what we do is roads. I think I carry a different perspective because we would never ask somebody before they could use our road what their income is,
Yeah.
right?
Correct.
And why should we treat this program any different than roads and bridges, right?
And why put people in that position? Jeez.
Well,
My
especially-
income is this, what do I have to do,
Roundabout,
carry
though.
that around?
Especially for PACE, right?
Keep
They're
it out.
already on
Well,
set
I'll
routes
be
anyway.
okay
Who
with you
cares?
as
It's
far as
just,
come to
if
go
anything,
roundabout.
if there is some frugal millionaire using the bus service, it's at least bringing the
Oh, I'm getting better
cost
at
per
it.
trip down, I
Down,
guess, a
right,
little
you
bit.
got it.
And don't forget, like I said, because we fund this with RTA sales tax, whether you're low income or wealthy, everyone pays RTA sales tax when they buy anything in the store,
Correct.
including food, things that are exempt in other sales taxes. They're paying this on every single purchase they make in the store, regardless of what their income is. So because we're all paying for it, we should all have the ability to receive this
And
service.
so quick question on the collection of sales tax then, if, I'm kind of checking my remembrance of how that tracks back. If someone goes to, let's say, a Walmart in Crystal Lake, they pay the sales tax there, but if they order from Amazon and it's shipped from Skokie, I don't know, Amazon's, does that sales tax paid to Skokie track back here?
So there was a few years ago, and Pete might be able to know more about this than I do. A few years ago,
Yeah, I
the
think he
state
said
tightened
it.
some of the rules around online sales tax collections. And we used to not receive online sales tax for the RTA. We are today. I don't think we're receiving the full amount that we could potentially be receiving, but we're receiving a lot more than we ever used to from online sales. As long as those purchases are made in McHenry County.
Yeah.
And that's, I believe that's what your question was where the purchase is actually being made.
Right, right.
So it's, and to be clear, like, we have people that maybe live in Kane County, they come up here, fill up their tank of gas, they're paying, we're getting that money from outsiders that are paying for stuff in McHenry County.
I do know it came up at a city council meeting in Woodstock that we use this program, and the money they save has gone to their terrible roads in Woodstock, which,
Roscoe was one of the three original people that we sat down with and really hashed out this agreement back in, 12 years ago now, 13
Yeah.
years ago. Yeah.
so it's not like the money is not going to roads
Right.
still. It's just that they have a little more money now in their
To deal with their
budget
local
to
issue.
fix up some of the.
And it's not just the subsidy that they used to have to pay PACE. Woodstock and every other city that had their own program had to have a staff person taking these phone calls from angry riders, explaining the program, working through with PACE. You know who does that now? Me and my staff at the DOT. So there's an intangible benefit beyond
Yeah.
just what their paycheck or what their invoices are every month. They're receiving a lot from this.
I just have one more question. Municipalities, I assume certain municipalities use these services more than others.
Yeah.
Do you have a rough, is it I suspect it might be Lake in the Hills, Algonquin, Woodstock are the heavier users.
I'm glad you asked that. It's a really interesting question, and I like talking about this because it's kind of wonky.
I like wonky.
The big three that I mentioned, the first three pilot communities, Woodstock, McHenry, and Crystal Lake, what we found was that even today, 12 years later, they're still our heaviest users by far. And I think because people that, predating this coordinated countywide dial-a-ride program, people moved to those cities because they had bus service.
Yeah.
And so there's a pent-up demand for bus service already in those cities that is sort of translated
Right.
down the line. But it's funny because Woodstock and Huntley have about the same population, and yet Woodstock, we provide 7, 8, 9 times the number of rides in Woodstock as we do in Huntley. Same population, but we're giving almost 10 times the number of rides in Woodstock. And it's for that reason, because people are predisposed to need transit, have located in Woodstock. They're not locating, and maybe this is gonna change as people age and find that they can't drive anymore in Huntley. But at this moment in time, we're still seeing that it's sort of a snowball effect has occurred.
And so for Woodstock, just roughly, how much of the resources are used for like Woodstock or any of the other, frankly, any of the other like heavy use communities?
I'm going to be spitballing here. I don't.
Yeah,
think
that's fine.
I would say more than half our rides are provided in those big three cities.
The big three: McHenry,
Crystal
Lake,
McHenry.
Woodstock.
Over 50% of our trips are provided in those three communities alone.
But can I also note too, that that's where many of our
Services.
services are located,
Including
is in
government
those three
services, yeah.
communities, and that's why those, from the very beginning, that's why those three communities were interested,
Yeah.
because that's who we're providing the transportation for.
Well, I know a group of people would get the dial ride, get to the Metro, take the Metro to Crystal Lake where they worked, get the bus took them to work, and then that was I would see them in the morning on the train, and they did that. That's how they got to work every day from Woodstock. They didn't have cars, and so they are, I didn't eavesdrop, but I that they would they would have dinner in Crystal. What kind? Let's all have dinner in Crystal. It was like a social group, and so they were working, they were spending their money in Crystal Lake, they didn't have the expense of a car.
That's where the hospitals were, that's where the federal health care quality.
That was exactly the example I used to use when I was talking about this program 10 years ago, was previous to this, you would need to take 6 transit trips to get from your home to work and back. You'd have to take a trip to the Metro trip down to Crystal Lake or vice versa, then another bus trip to your final work destination. You can do it all over in reverse. So that's 6 trips compared to today, you're doing 2. You're getting a ride from your home to work and work to home. That's it. And so it's not only the time savings, there's a cost savings to that. And that's why, again, we're seeing our program is much more efficient than how it used to operate pre-countywide dial-a-ride.
This has been great. Thank you so much.
Well, and sorry I didn't give this information earlier. I'm an open book, and I'd love to kind of talk more about this. I hate hijacking your meeting for transit, though. I know this isn't.
I feel like we hijacked you.
Yeah.
I'm glad you hijacked it because it was really good information. Thank you,
Well,
Scott.
but this is also the kind of thing I'm yelling and I'm looking over. This is the kind of information I think we should be doing in our communications efforts.
Yes.
Because again, it may drive more people to reduce the cost of overall, transportation. But it also, the story is, we did give money back. We did give money back to you for other purposes. This is what happens when we collaborate, when governments collaborate. It's a good story.
Yeah. And also, when people say, well, what does the county board do anyway?
Right.
We have maybe we need to, beat our own drum more often about the things that we do that are collaborative, that are not divisive, but that we do more together. We get a lot done.
Nobody's gonna blow your horn but you.
Yeah, we should be talking about
Well,
that.
and we know we could have done more probably to get the word out. It's not what we do at the DOT on a day-to-day. We're not good at this kind of thing. But that's where if the county board really
Absolutely.
prioritized that, that would be a good thing to do.
You know, next
So-
Wednesday night, we're doing a presentation at McCog on all the ways we're collaborating. I made a note, this is, you know, in Shaylin and I, we had 10 minutes. This is something I'll remind all the mayors that we're doing. Just-
Yes, I think that's
It'll just take
important.
30 seconds, but it's a good forum to remind everybody what we're doing.
And it would be nice if they shared, it, like the little ripple in the water, you know, if it's our story and we can push it forward, it'd be nice if a few of them took advantage of an empty newsletter or a space on their website or whatever, you know? And again, we have to ask. People don't think about, you don't think about doing those things unless somebody brings it to your attention. And that's our job, not yelling at anybody else, it's our job.
Any other questions I can answer, or is this more than enough?
Oh my God, it's wonderful, it's wonderful, wonderful. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
You know how to get a hold of me if you have follow-up questions. I can talk about this offline with you all later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
I wasn't bored at all.
Okay, so.
Quarter after 10 and I haven't been bored.
Right.
We've been very good.
Under presentations, we have Mike Waneke with the Veterans
No,
Assistance
we haven't done that. We
Commission.
just did, we have to go back.
Huh?
We didn't pass the floor, but I know, we're
I
gonna go back.
know.
No, that's fine. I was just
Yeah,
wondering.
Yes, I said we have to go
Oh,
back, yeah.
Gotcha, yeah,
I'm confirming looking at you.
gotcha. Okay.
Thanks for
Yep.
using WebEx.
We
Visit
still
our
have to go back.
website at www.webex.com.
Oh, you already picked it. It's good to see everybody. I'm trying to think of the last time I did a presentation to this committee, and I think Ursula Schuster was on the board. Thanks, I got here. Let's pass these down here. Here you go, Gloria.
Thank you.
Thanks. And I'll keep some extras. How does this thing work?
Just use the arrow on the right to go
Okay. I might be technologically impaired. One of my goals during any presentation is to violate as many rules as I can for doing a presentation. Did anybody see the eagle over on Greenwood this morning? Sitting in the corner at Greenwood and 120, bald eagle up there. My wife was,
What time? What time?
that was at right before 8 o'clock.
Okay, yeah, I came through about that time. I missed it.
And my wife was telling me that there is several nesting pairs of bald eagles in McHenry County, especially near McHenry Dam, so I
Yeah.
think it's pretty exciting.
There are up by me, so.
They're all over, again. Okay,
Yeah, good.
Ready? The bad part about transportation, long, big lots, blah, blah, blah. Good part about big lots is that it encourages, you know, more wildlife.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, I'm Mike Iwaniki, I'm the superintendent of the Veterans Assistance Commission, and you know, I gave Lou the opportunity to decide which presentation to do, the 45-minute one or the 15-minute one. She didn't give me an answer. I'm not going to read the slides because I know all of you can read. Basically, what we're here to do is we're here to help the veterans community. The act that the Veterans Assistance Commission was surrounded around was actually signed sometime after the Civil War, so it's been around a really long time. And it's gone through a few modifications. We believe sometime after World War II they added Veterans Assistance Commissions on it, because prior to that, when you had a veteran in need, the post, and it shows you how old the law was, at one point it said the Army of the Republic would go to the county clerk and request that the money would be provided for them. And after a while, as populations got big, and of course World War II, there's a lot of veterans, yeah, that became an administrative burden on counties, so they provided some provision to create the Veterans Assistance Commissions. Like I said, we believe that happened sometime around World War II. That's one of my favorite numbers right there. That's how much the VA spent in McHenry County in 2021. That's the number that I am very interested in. That's the one that my staff is very interested in, and that's the one we try to work to get up. The beauty part about that is a lot of that money, like I said, it's spent locally. We want that number to be nice and high, and that's that covers everything, and that's a breakdown of it. This is the one that we have a lot of influence over. We also have a lot of influence over the healthcare. VA disability and compensation, that's when a veteran becomes injured or becomes disabled or ill with a chronic illness as a result of their military service. Our job is to help them present and prosecute that claim before the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. We are certified by the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs to prosecute those claims all the way to the Board of Appeals. The Board of Appeals is an administrative law judge that I get to sit in front of and present or argue a case before the judge on behalf of the veteran. Always fun. VA healthcare. We've got a clinic right here in McHenry County. That's what the cost of taking care of McHenry County veterans is. And do you think that takes away some of the costs to our local healthcare community? Yes, it does. They're doing their job. They're taking care of our veterans. Education, that is actually education not only for the veteran, but certain veterans, because of their disabilities, they're entitled to have their children receive education benefits. So that's not only going to the veteran, that's going to some of the children here in McHenry County. And insurance and indemnities. It's like an insurance policy against loss. That is where you got some of your surviving spouses whose loved one died because of a service-connected injury. And of course, insurance is exactly what it sounds like. It's VA life insurance. Some people who are disabled, their opportunity to get life insurance is slim and none. The VA is able to provide them with an opportunity to get life insurance. This is what we did in 2022. The numbers I showed you from the VA from 2021. The VA publishes the numbers every year around April, so we don't have those yet. Eventually I will get them. We typically do very, very well. Because the accreditation we have is federal, we cannot discriminate against individuals who come to our office wanting help with VA claims. So we get them from all over. The furthest away I've had a client was Japan. And I don't know what time it was when they would call my office. It was pretty darn early for them. But that was the numbers from last year, that these represent payments. These are new numbers. These represent payments that are going to be reoccurring moving forward. We only track them for 4 years. And then we assume that they drop off and get nothing. This is some of the services we provide. Under the law, we're able to provide assistance based on what is in the Public Aid Code, Article 6 and Article 9. Article 6 basically is your financial assistance programs. Article 9 is your social service programs. The financial assistance programs are very similar to township general assistance, so much so that we report to the townships any clients we have who are receiving financial assistance, because if they're also going to the township, that's considered double dipping. They're not allowed to do that. The only exception is emergency assistance. Under the law, we both can provide emergency assistance. But if we're doing veterans assistance, it's similar to general assistance. It's better for a veteran to come to our office than it is to go to the township. Our outreach, this would be considered educational outreach, except I'm not giving you the 45-minute presentation here. But we also do direct client. What that means is sometimes we have to go to their house, either by disability or work schedule. Sometimes they just can't get to a veteran service officer unless we accommodate them, and that's when we started doing that. And this board and Hans left, public planning, they actually helped us get our first grant so we could start doing client outreach, and that was back in 2005. Advocacy is probably our biggest time sucker, if you want to call it that. Presenting a claim before the VA, when we're interviewing a client just to get the claim started, an initial consult is about 2 hours. You can imagine, as with anything with government, there is a whole lot of paperwork. And I learned that the VA had just made things a little easier for people to direct deposit their money by turning it over to the U.S. Treasury Department, and maybe they made it easier on the VA. They certainly didn't make it easier on anybody else. So we've been doing a lot of that lately, is helping veterans walk through how to communicate with the Treasury Department to get their direct deposits changed. And as was stated earlier, we do transport to the Lovell Federal Health Care Center. Before I get the question, about $136. We don't only just go to Lovell. The VA has been authorized to contract with facilities outside of Lovell for certain specialties. The people we transport, as was said over here earlier, generally don't have other options. So we're transporting them oftentimes to some of these specialty cares that they can't get or aren't immediately available at Lovell. Do you mind?
Yeah, it's topical. What's the furthest distance to the other facilities?
Oak Brook.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and Oak Brook, occasionally we get, I'm playing.
Really?
Yeah, Oak Brook is fun. I love doing presentations. Oak Brook, the VA, also with the compensation and pension, they are now contracting outside of the VA hospitals to send them for comp and pen exams. One interesting fact about the VA is there's 3 of them. They're all called the VA. You have the Veterans Health Administration, Benefits Administration, and Cemetery Administration. And as with any effective bureaucratic form of federal government, they don't talk to each other. So the Veterans Benefits Administration tells the Veterans Health Administration that they need an exam for a person filing a claim, and the VA Hospital Health Administration has 30 days to fulfill that. If they can't do it in 30 days, they have to send them outside. So there's 2 contractors that they work with, and one of their favorite places to send people is Oak Brook. Well, it gets back to an individual who can't travel well, has no way of getting there, and if they don't have family getting there, we're going to help them get there.
And do they just have to call the VAC? Or how do they go about getting a ride?
They say, Mike, they're sending me to Oak Brook. I don't have a way to get there. Okay, let's see if we can get you there. That's how it happens. They give us a call.
Okay.
One of the things we have them do when they're filing a claim, we really want them, anytime the VA contacts them throughout that claim process, we want them to call us and let us know what they're doing. Right now, we have 600 claims outstanding. Some of these are ones we did since the beginning of the year. Some of these are as many as 2 years old. The VA doesn't move quickly on all these claims. So it's one of those things, you never know how long it's going to take. And now with the PACT Act, the PACT Act was signed in August 10th. Between August 10th and August 31st, and 200,000 plus claims were added to the rolls.
Mike, can you say what that act is?
The PACT Act was basically honor our PACT Act. It addressed certain environmental hazards, specifically Agent Orange, some radiation issues, and burn pits. But those are the ones that everybody understands because they spell it out, but they didn't spell out, and I keep reminding my staff, it's any environmental hazard, TCEs, PCEs. Trichlorofluoroethylene was used up until the mid-'80s. It was in products like paint thinners, it was used in degreasers, it was used in spot removers. Chances are Everybody in this room used them. But not to the extent that many of the people in the military used them. And depending on what their job was in the military, if they were a mechanic, they probably were exposed to asbestos, TCEs, PCEs, and all that other fun stuff. Electronics technicians were doing the same thing. Welders, one not too oftenly thought of fact is people who do heavy welding, like a Navy hull technician, they do a whole lot of welding and fixing of things. The fumes from the gases they're using to do the welding and some of the metals involved in the welding, some of that stuff gets atomized, they inhale them, and they can cause problems in the future. Some of the problems are actually like Parkinson's and some other other mental health and related issues associated with brain damage from breathing that stuff in. PCEs cause cancer and other issues. So these are all things that are looking at that weren't directly addressed under the PACT Act. I mean, they typically, when they added a presumptive condition, which basically means that the VA is conceding that if you were there, you were exposed. So if you had the illness, they're going to concede that, yeah, the illness was caused by this. With other environmental hazards, they opened it up and said, we're going to treat these differently, and we're going to investigate these differently, and more credit is going to go to the veteran's statement on this than what they did before. It's not presumptive, it's direct. We still have to prove exposure. We still have to prove that they used it regularly in the military, that they have a current illness, and that there's a connection between their current illness and what happened in the military. Yes?
So under that presumptive with Agent Orange, was Fort McClellan included in that in Anniston, Alabama? You know, that was the biological warfare headquarters during the Vietnam War, and it was also where women vets were trained.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there's a database
Mm-hmm.
of women veterans who was that included?
Not that I'm aware of.
Of course.
However, again, it gets back to the environmental hazards. So if somebody from Fort McClellan tells me I'm doing the same thing with Okinawa. The Japanese, when we gave them back Okinawa and, basically closed that base there, now they're doing their own thing and they're finding all kinds of garbage we left. And they are complaining to the U.S. government that some of this is toxic. Well, we know Agent Orange was there, and we know we had a lot of sailors there. And so we're filing those claims, even though we do not currently recognize that it happened.
So because Anniston was, by the EPA, named the number one toxic environment in the country.
Oh, I thought that was Aberdeen. Go ahead.
And then, so all those veterans that drank that water that were sprayed in blah, 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 would they be able to file a claim under that?
I strongly encourage it.
Oh, well, that's interesting. I'll be in touch.
So I have a question too. I had a friend that was exposed to Agent Orange, and there was like this, at one time they were, I don't know if it was class action, because there were a lot of veterans who were exposed, but his case was denied. And so I heard you say something that like now the VA just accepts it. Is it easier now to, to be included in, to have your case approved, that you are, what you're suffering, if you had cancer and,
If it depends on the condition. The
Okay.
presumptions with Agent Orange, the VA has them all listed. There's other things that could have happened, and I usually warn veterans that if there's a could have been resulted, we're going to need some good medical evidence, some good research, and it's not going to get decided at the VA regional office. It's going to get decided by a judge.
I see.
And I have a number of those. We've been successful with some of those. It's just a matter of seeing what the research is. Like autoimmune diseases and Agent Orange, they've done a lot of research on that. There's no connection.
Okay.
National Institute of Health is my biggest source of information. I use those as opposed to other sources because the VA uses it too. And so if I have something and a doctor says, I reviewed this article from the National Institute of Health that says Agent Orange really looks good for this thing happening, and I believe that's what happened to my client, then I'm going to use that and I'm going to get in front of a judge. I know the VA regional office is probably going to deny it, but a judge may approve it.
Thank you.
These are some of our service goals that we're looking at trying to get done. These are all short-term. One of the issues that came up when they clarified the law last May was we were hearing that they wanted the VACs to focus some more on disabled veterans' employment. Apparently, there's been some concerns that the resources aren't there anymore as they used to. I know that the local veterans employment representative for IDES covers 3 counties, and their main office is not here. So these are all things we're trying to work on. Online scheduling, we just want the option for people to see what our schedule is and pick something online. Right now we have a lot of people who call, a lot of people who drop in, and many of those are very good on the computer, and they could just do it just like you do with your doctor. Or how many schedule with their doctor online? Am I the only one? So that's pretty good. We do plan on having a stakeholders meeting. We had to cancel it last year because there were some things in the law that needed my immediate attention, and it took months to get that thing squared away, so we kind of held that off, decided to get the talent in place before we address some of the things they wanted us to do in the law. And I sincerely appreciate the county board from allowing us to get the money, to get the talent in place, because we got the jump on other VACs before the January 1st implementation date when everybody was scrambling to get service officers. And which brings up the legal changes. I thought of including reading off each of these 2 acts. I thought better of it. Last May is when 102-732 was signed by the governor. That was the one that provided clarifications for the VACs. It basically strictly said that we're an independent unit of government, what our minimum funding is, what our maximum funding is, and some of the programs that they felt that a VAC should be providing. 102-1132 was just signed in February by the governor. It went into effect immediately. That was a little bit more clarification to it, and it went into enforcement. And I shared this with the state's attorney's office because there are some interesting parts of that that I thought the state's attorney should know. But when it gets down to it, it almost looks like I need to go to the Attorney General's office for an opinion rather than the state's attorney. So, but they're reviewing it to see if I'm not wrong. And that's the 15-minute presentation. I want to leave plenty of time for you to ask questions.
How many veterans are in this county?
I knew I was going to get that one. I believe around 16,000. That's veterans, and then you have to consider their family members.
So what percentage uses your services, do you think?
Good question. Hard to say because they're all different programs. If I had that answer, I'd give that to you.
Can you get it?
Yeah, I probably can.
Why don't you do that?
Just the number,
Yeah.
yeah, the number of veterans we help a year would be wonderful.
Because I know we have about 8,000 people on our roster, but that also includes the surviving spouses. So the 16,000 does not include those who are dead. So the ones that have died, we're still taking care of family members.
So my ex-husband is a veteran. He lives here in Woodstock, and I know he's used the bus to go to North Chicago for, you know, appointments and that
Mhm.
kind of thing.
I think I
And,
know your ex-husband.
Bill Lurch?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you mentioned a clinic in Woodstock,
A clinic in McHenry.
in McHenry, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was not aware of that.
There is a community-based outpatient clinic affiliated with North Chicago, Level Federal Health Care Center, and that's in McHenry County. That was one of the first outpatient clinics they got. And I think you were there for the presentation.
I was.
So-
Okay,
I am
because,
old.
you know, I know he had an appointment like, it was like in the middle of COVID, and the bus service, there was some issue with the bus service, so I drove him to North Chicago. And I know that there are some things that probably he would have to go to North Chicago for anyway, but I've never heard him mention that there was a clinic in McHenry.
Part of the problem is the clinic in McHenry doesn't do everything that the hospital does.
Okay.
During COVID, the VA hospital, we don't get any money from the VA. And that's a good thing because, you know, as far as VA hospital, because they can't tell us how to run our
That's right.
transportation program.
Yeah.
The agencies that do take money from the VA, they're told who they can take and who they can't. We want to take people who may have mobility issues. The VA says if they can't get on the bus under their own power, you can't take them. So we decided long ago, we're not going to take their money, we're just going to do it and make sure that people can get there. During COVID, I got a phone call and they literally begged me, please discontinue your transportation service until this blows over. Because they were very worried about the exposures on the bus, they were worried about the exposures at the hospital. So we ended up shutting down transportation for quite a while. That was not very pleasant. I didn't like it at all. But
Yeah, but it was a safe thing to do. I
Yeah.
think that was a good call.
And the fun part about PACE, and I kind of joke about it, we have 2 PACE buses. And I got plexiglass to put between the driver and the passengers. And I set this up, made it look really pretty. And then we marked out what seats people could sit in because we were limited on those buses and where they could sit. And then Pace called and said, you can't use them until we put safety up. And I said, I already did it, don't worry about it. I said, no, we got a contract, we got to send it out, don't do it until this. They came in and my God, it was literally a shower curtain.
Oh my goodness.
So I thought that was kind of humorous. And I called them, I said, you got to be kidding me. So it was interesting.
Well, I want to say the VAC does a remarkable job serving veterans in this county. And the CVOC in McHenry is very good. But they're like an HMO. You know, you go there for your generals, your physicals, your lab and stuff. Anything beyond that, you go to James Lovell. Yeah, you do a great job here, Mike, you and your staff.
And one of the things they have is always you're talking about that. It does work like an HMO, but they got a program called My Healthy Vet. I'd pull up mine, but I'd be violating my own HIPAA rights. The beauty part is I can communicate with my primary care doctor at any time. And this could be any veteran. If I feel I need to go to orthopedic, I can communicate by using this with my doctor, and I can get that referral to orthopedics. So it's really easy to get services. They make it really good. Lovell is a fantastic place to get care. And
Well, and if you're traveling now, the VA, so if I get sick in like Brookings, South Dakota, I call a number, I get a location, I go and get seen, I get prescriptions, and the VA covers all of that. I mean, so no matter where I'm at in the country, I can also tap into any VA, and they pull up my record. They can pull up my record in California, and there's my chart. I mean, in some ways, the VA is way ahead of civilian healthcare.
I will qualify that your mileage may vary.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially California. New Jersey.
And I'm just saying, like, when they talk about coordinated care, that, you know, there's all these, I think we do it in the VA. We do it. And it's
beneficial.
It's
the way it
very
should work.
efficient, very efficient.
So do they have, I don't know much about the VA, my father-in-law uses it. Do they have dental care, do they cover dental care and eye exams and things like that too? I know this is not the VAC, it's the VA, but.
No, that's okay, and my job is to know the VA. No, they do not do dental care. They do have dental care for people who are service-connected for dental or who are 100% disabled. They do not for everybody else. For everybody else who uses VA healthcare, Congress approved a VDIP program, Veterans Insurance Dental Program thing, and they have contracts with Delta Dental and MetLife, and it's reasonable. You can get a really good dental plan, but it's specific to patients of the VA, and then you can take that and it's used by any of your dentists outside the VA. But to answer your question, no, very limited, and even then they have a limited number of dentists, so sometimes they're sending them out to community care, which isn't bad, except that the dentist has to be willing to pay what the VA gives them.
I got my hearing aids today.
Yeah, as far as eye care, yes, I can go get my glasses at the VA if I want to.
Well, there's some great benefits.
Oh yeah, the hearing aids are top notch.
Oh my, yes, as you all know, and I don't have them in. Yeah, programming with my phone, yeah.
We do put out an annual report. It's due January 1st every year. I set a record. I got it in early November, or early March.
It's very good, has
Yeah.
a lot of information.
We have it
Gotta
online
read it.
on our website here at the county, so it's available to read.
I just have one other question. It's somewhat off topic. So McHenry County has specialty courts right now, like alcohol, drug, mental health. The only one we don't have, and I wasn't able to find, or at least easily find much information on it, was like a veterans court.
It's because they don't want it.
And do you know why, or can you speculate why, or?
My speculation why is because there's other laws that help. One of them was, and I kind of half agree with it, that many of the veterans who would have taken advantage of it also have the money to pay their way out of it.
Okay.
So it's not like Lake County.
End up in mental health court.
Well,
And a
and
lot
that
of
was
them,
gonna-
yeah, a lot of them are part of the mental health court.
And that's what I was gonna
Yeah.
say. What is there any program that you're aware of? And if you don't know, that's fine, because I have no idea either. That a veterans court like would address that one of those other specialty courts wouldn't address. Like, is there anything like
I
claim
don't-
disputes with the VA or anything that would go through that?
Usually if there's a problem with anything going on in the courts, I get notified by the people at the judicial people over at Level.
Okay.
So I'm not aware of any problems at this time. Jessica has not called me saying, we've got this problem, can you help us with that?
Okay.
I'm gonna build on that. Does Lake County have a veterans court?
Yes.
So, I guess maybe that would be how many cases, and if there's not,
The problem that I was hearing, this is going back to Scott Block, but then we also had the former head judge of the 22nd come over and talk to the VAC. They simply did not want it. They feel they had the numbers to justify
Yeah, I
it,
think
and that's probably the big
that's
issue.
And
Because-
they probably do get, or at least a substantial portion of them probably would potentially get wrapped up in one of those other specialty courts that are provided.
Right, and the ones that were taking advantage of the state's attorney's veterans track, most of them just assume buy their way out. So rather than going through the program, they just pay whatever fines that they negotiate with their lawyers and get out
Sorry.
that way.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mike, Rockford has a private practice for I can't remember the name of it. It's for veterans,
Mhm.
and they do therapy. It's not connected, it is VA, but it's not. Their records are not connected. So it's very protective
Are you talking about,
What is it called? It's,
oh gosh.
I even know where it's at.
You're talking about the vet centers.
The vet center. Do we have one here?
No, the closest one would be Rockford.
And what is that about?
Now, we do have vet centers representatives who go to Veterans Path to Hope and meet with veterans. But we don't actually have a center physically located in McHenry County.
And so for veterans who discharge out of the military, who are often very leery of touching VA processes at all, the vet centers are sort of a place they can go until they get,
Yeah, the vet centers are specific, they're generally mental health.
they are mental health. I'm
So-
talking about trauma, right? Vets
Mhm.
with PTSD or trauma who are treated in the vet centers that are very veteran focused. I know the one in Rockford does a great job.
Oh, yeah, they're phenomenal.
Yeah, but we don't have anything that's community-wide for.
We don't have a specific vet center here. The vet center people actually meet veterans over at Veterans Path to Hope in Crystal Lake. So they have I believe they have a Vietnam group and a Desert Storm group. So, yeah, no, we don't have a vet center. Yes, we have the services.
Do you think we could benefit from a vet center?
I don't know, and I don't know that that's something that, I mean, we used to have something like that, but it was melded with the outpatient clinic. And then they pulled out of the outpatient clinic, because like you said, some people just don't want to go to the VA.
Yeah.
I just don't agree with the numbers yet.
Yeah, I'm curious because of something that came up at the post meeting the other night. We talked about the family or the.
Veterans and Family Resource Center,
Yeah,
that some of the
yeah, and
posts
so I
are
was
interested
kind
in.
of, when you were talking, I was thinking, well, I wonder what that, I just, yeah.
That is a potential key to that. The big thing with that is that's still in the talking phase for the.
Yeah, I
everybody
know,
wants
but
to do it.
it just sort of like clicked there when.
But the other thing that was brought up, though, was be the one, which is the veteran suicide issue. And we've got a number of ideas that we're working on to get that. I know that McHenry is sponsoring a 22-mile ruck march to bring attention to that. You know, we got a couple people in my staff who are gonna be doing the full 22 miles. I think most of them are gonna do it. Yeah, I'm dumb enough to try.
22 veterans a day.
Yeah. And then.
I know.
Then
In general, it's
Then
bad,
Crystal
yeah.
Lake has got a program they're working on as well. And then Woodstock is talking about maybe linking onto one of those. I've got an idea we might try. I gotta present it to the Post and see what they wanna do. So, if it doesn't involve a lot of work, it may work.
Well, they're elderly,
Yeah,
not me,
yeah, we're the younger ones.
I was gonna say we're both the younger ones.
Does anybody have anything else?
You just do such a great job, Mike.
Well, my phone number and text number is on there. I do turn off my phone when I don't want anything, so,
It's a good
so
idea.
feel free to, but our office is downstairs. Any questions regarding anything veteran or any recommendations? I know, Lou, you and I talked about, I mean, we were talking about the housing thing earlier. You and I talked about the tiny house community for homeless. And I think that's an option in there too. It's,
You should go see if you haven't seen the VAC offices downstairs, they're very nice, they're really nice. Stop by, Michael.
and we yell at very few people.
It's a nice change.
Well, thank you for coming in. We
You're welcome.
certainly
And I'm sorry I missed the
appreciate
last
and we-
one. I was out of town when that happened.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Okay, before we go back to the routine consent items that were pulled, does anybody need a bio break?
Oh, God,
Okay.
no. Melissa's
No.
been sitting here forever. Just get her back to work.
Right, okay. So I think we left off at 7.2. Can I get?
We never had a vote on someone.
We never had a vote on 7.1. Okay, that was
We made a motion.
all
Just
tough
to
and
discuss.
shortened. Okay, so we need a vote.
Aye. I mean, I don't know, I don't believe any of this is time sensitive. I don't know what the discussions were when I was gone. Apologies again. But I would like, at least not if we're talking about 7-1, but I think just generally, I would like to get a little more information about these programs. It's hard for me to take an affirmative vote in favor
That's exactly what
of
I'm
any
talking
of
about.
these without having a little more detail on it. So maybe I'd love to hear what everyone else thinks, but at least push it to the next committee meeting and see if we can get a little more data on all this or information.
Can you look at 7.4, does that fall in the same, that's, right? Is that yours?
I'm happy to answer questions.
Right,
I'm not
it's,
sure.
you pulled that in, that really is public health. I don't think that's an issue, I don't think that falls within.
Yeah, you know what? It's actually funny. I meant to pull 7.5 off, not 7.4. I'm fine with it. I just wanted to make a general comment. I was going to vote for it anyway, so there's no issue there. But the issue I do have is, we're expanding department sizes, and we're using this COVID relief money to fund it, and I'm happy about that. But I do worry that if we just keep expanding things, when the year 2026 rolls around, is there going to be a sharp increase in staff payroll, essentially, that's going to need to be covered? It's an issue down the line, but it is just something I wanted to point out.
So then can I make a motion real quickly before we have further discussion to approve 7.4? Can I do that?
I'll second.
Yeah,
Okay.
because then she can go back to work.
Sure, okay.
The second.
Second.
Okay, so I'll talk.
I second.
Well, whoever.
We got 3 seconds. I was
Yeah.
first.
Take it
7.4.
first.
Am I responding?
No, we're just making a
We're
motion.
approving.
Oh, but I'm happy to respond to. just-
Any discussion on
Uh,
Switch?
Let's do the motion on
7.4.
7.4 and get that done, and then if you want to, yeah.
Well, she is
Yeah.
7.5.
No, his question was 7.5.
7.5.
All right, so how about we take a vote on 7.4?
I'm in favor. I don't know if we're doing roll call or unanimous.
Yes.
Ness,
Yes.
Hendricks.
Yes.
Van Hoff,
Yes.
Shorten,
Yes.
Wagner,
Yes.
Altough.
Yes.
Von Bergen.
Yes.
Okay, so just real quick, so the intent is, those with the ARPA is gonna sunset, right? So we have between now and then to really continuously reevaluate what is the number we need. Right now, we need a few more people. We've had some capacity issues, we've had so much turnover just to stabilize some operations, and we're getting more and more grants, and it takes more work. But the intent is not necessarily at, January 1st, 2027 to say, hey, we want to permanently add these. It would take we'd have to come before you again to say, yes, we actually do need this to be a permanent position, and either move it onto the general fund or see if there's a grant. But that's not what we're asking for right now. We're just kind of buying some time to stabilize those operations.
No, and I can appreciate that, but obviously no one, especially if they're doing good work, it's helping the Department of Health. No one wants to cut a position once it's in, especially, I know, at least I personally don't. And so my concern is when we are using all this ARPA money to create like new jobs, new roles that actually add, it's not just filling in, a full-time employee, it's actually adding it to the department, correct? It's adding to the head count?
It is adding to the head count through the end of 2026. And we have a few other positions that have already been approved that are like that. So
Right.
that the idea was, okay, when things stabilize, assuming COVID, is more manageable, which now it is.
Mhm.
And ARPA does require you to continuously evaluate that need over time.
No, and I completely get it. I'm not opposed to this.
But your concern is that
In
later we would.
once the ARPA expires, did we just add, 30, not just your department, but just overall, did we add a bunch of employees and now we have to decide if we're either laying people off, which I don't think anyone here would like to do if they can avoid it, or are we gonna have to increase our taxes significantly?
But
Hold on, go ahead. So I do want to say, before you joined, I would say like 4 years ago or so, there was a significant cut in staff throughout the whole county. The leadership of the county just wanted to have a reduction in staff overall. And some of it was just cut too much, and you'll see in different departments that they've continually asked, different departments have asked for more. So I think this is just kind of building that back up. We are providing more services and have more people in the county that we have to serve too. So it's kind of like
No.
rebalancing a little bit, I know.
And I'm not saying you're wrong, it's just a concern for me that, and who knows, I might not even be on the board then, maybe this is an issue for someone else, but I'm just, like I said, I'm just concerned that, come 2026, all of a sudden, we're gonna have to go to taxpayers and say,
Well-
by the way, we need an extra $3 million for staff we added, you just didn't realize it because it was paid for by the federal government in the meantime, so. And that's just my concern.
I don't want to be the rain on people's parade. The bill's going to come much sooner. We're going to have to talk to taxpayers because I know this is not a popular issue. We pay for services with tax money from our constituents. We have not increased the levy, or we have not paid up or funded in ways that provide a healthy, robust response system. And I don't care, you can disagree with me, but I've been on the street and I have listened to people. Can't get mental health services, the things that they have no access to that they used to. Where do people think money comes from? So I think your question is something for us to really deliberately look at. How do we build this county back up so that we can support? It's not even new need. It's existing need. I think it should be on our table and we should be talking about that. At your presentation, I don't think the health department should be leaning on grants for funding. I mean, some, yes, but they have to use existing staff to write grants and monitor. Anyway.
Well, I see both sides of the issue, right? Like on the one hand, who doesn't want to help, the county provide, more services for, insert the topic here, transportation, health, whatever, mental health. But, on the other hand, it's just an additional burden. I don't think anyone here disagrees that Illinois in general every person pays pretty high taxes. They go to good things. I'm not disputing that, right? I'm not against public schools or anything like that. And I know the county doesn't touch it. But, on the same hand, from the county perspective, right, inflation's high. So, especially the last year or so. So, we're, I would assume, able to get less with the dollars that we do have.
We've got nothing sometimes.
Well, I'm just saying, like, our dollars don't stretch as far as they would have. But on the same hand, property tax, I think I looked this up a while ago. I think McHenry County's property, and it's not the county portion, but McHenry County is in like the top 0.1% of property taxes. And so, slapping just even more taxes on residents, especially in a time of economic uncertainty, right? Like, arguably, like there's a forecast that we're going to be going through a recession, in the next year or so. There's inflation, like families are struggling. Milk's high, eggs are high. Common everyday items cost more than they did, and and then to just go back to them and say, without at least looking at it, or at least keeping that in mind when we're doing things, passing all these expansions. I'm not necessarily opposed to expanding services or what have you, but it's tough to go to taxpayers and say, hey, we know your income's not stretching as far, but also we want to increase your tax bill, and that's where that's my general concern.
Well,
on the county level.
Eric, when we were talking about passing the Affordable Care Act, I would say to people, so where do you want to pay for the health care? Do you want to pay it here, or do you wanna pay the emergency room bill where they have to see them for strep throat? So I ended up in the emergency room like 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. I got a bill by accident. Now I'm VA referred, so I don't pay it. $15,000. I was like, what the heck? What did you do? I saw a doctor once, you know, I sat in this room. I was like, $15,000. If I couldn't have paid that, who do you think pays for that? We pay for that. So I think it's both yes. If we have to send children for residential care out of this county to Wisconsin or Indiana, it costs us 4 times. We pay for that. And so.
And we do. And
We do pay for that, that's right.
No, I
So.
mean, we do send
Oh, no, we
children
do.
out of this.
Well, we don't
county.
have anything here.
That's right.
We don't have anything in the county. So I think your question is, and I don't know how to have that conversation that you're asking for, which I think is important for us. And poor Melissa, who's.
Yeah,
Oh, no, I
I
just
think
have-
that conversation needs to maybe be another
Another
time. Let's get Melissa
approved.
back.
No,
to-
it was, and just one more comment. So we are mostly grant funded, right? So we offset the general fund. We try to reduce our pull on the general fund whenever possible. And we have general funded positions on our roster that when we get a new grant, we'll move those positions over to the grant. We don't have to do that, but we try to be mindful of the dollars that, you know, and be efficient and effective and mindful of the taxpayer. So we do often make those choices to cover a position on those grants despite that they're already covered on
No, and
the general fund.
I appreciate that, and if I wasn't trying to insinuate that.
Oh, no, I
that
just
that you weren't.
for the education purposes, in case people don't realize that we often come here and we'll
I
move
think
those over.
McHenry County does an overall good job with that, especially in comparison to some nearby counties. So I'm not complaining about that. It was just a general concern I have.
I think it's a great question, Eric.
Oh, thank you.
Good
Thank
conversation.
you, Melissa.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't think, did we ever take a vote on 7-1?
7-1 through 7-3, I think we still.
So we made, so that was motion by Altough, second by Shorten. So how about we get that vote out of the way? And
Can
that,
we amend it to do all, or did you want to have
that
it?
is,
Well, is this a motion to vote, or are we?
To send it, yeah, motion to approve, to send it to the full board for approval.
You can abstain if you want
I
until you
think he
get
wants
further.
it. You
I would vote no. I mean, I want to push it to the next committee so we can get more information, but
I would suggest
Yeah.
that you go back and watch the video of when you were gone.
yeah.
Right.
That's 20 minutes, and then also, it's a long, but there are 2 different meetings, on a Monday and Tuesday of the CDBG, and that Larry Smith is
On the county
chair.
website.
Yes.
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
So that will give you all the information you need, if
Okay.
you have time, because that'll be a long.
I'm still, well.
And
we'll probably
Hans
vote.
when you were gone, Hans has made a promise that now and in the future, we'll have a spreadsheet with substantially more information when those are presented to committee. Yes? Am I
Right.
speaking?
Yeah, I can even probably just insert that into the resolution now, you know, as soon as I finish it and put it in there, so that would be easy to do.
Not to say that you have to vote no, my motion stands.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think we
so
should,
how
I'd like
about-
to go ahead and.
Let's take the vote and move on.
So to clarify, this is just for 7.1,
I would amend it and make it for all of
All
them.
right,
but
okay.
Ms. Wagner has abstained
And I
from
bel-
1 and 2, so
and-
we
Right.
can't really make it for all 3.
And I believe whether it passes or fails,
I
right,
see,
it goes on
right.
the county agenda regardless. It just depends where, if it goes on under consent or new business.
If it passes, it goes under consent. If it fails,
So no matter what, it's gonna be on the next,
it would be under.
Agenda.
Yeah.
okay.
So can we do 1 and 2?
No, we have to would do one, because you wanted to abstain from 2 and 3.
No, 1 and 2.
Oh, 1 and 2, sorry,
Let's do 1 and 2.
sorry.
I'm
Yes.
sorry, I'm making it complicated.
No, no.
All right, so we're going to take 1 and 2 together with a motion by Altough, second by Shorten.
Yes.
Ms. Wagner,
Abstain.
Van Hoff,
Yes,
Shorten,
Yes.
Ness,
Yes.
Hendricks,
No.
Altough,
Yes.
Von Bergen.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. 7.3, resolution authorizing a revision to the Emergency Solutions Grant Program funds and authorizing a sub-recipient agreement with Transitional Living Services, DBA Veterans Path to Hope. Could I get a motion for that one, please?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Alta.
Second.
Second. And Hoff. Thank you. Discussion, Hans?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yep, talk about this one too. So in 2020, we were awarded from the state, this is actually a state pass-through, so Kelly had asked about that earlier. The only instance in which we do receive pass-through of some of the HUD Community Planning and Development Funds is the Emergency Solutions Grant Program. And typically, those allocations go to 4 of our nonprofits that provide shelter services in the community. In the instance of COVID, we received a total of roughly $1 million in funding between 2 separate allocations. So the county actually did receive a portion of those funds, of both of those allocations. And this is part of the second allocation of about $259,000. We had accepted those under the guise of providing homelessness prevention support. And as you all know, we received $16.4 million in Treasury ERA funds, plus the fact that the Emergency Solutions Grant required there to be a filed eviction order in place. And so the ESG funds for prevention could not be used for that purpose because we had a moratorium for so long that we ran into having our ERA funds. So what we would like to do to close out this grant is to allocate it to Veterans Path to Hope for some modifications to allow for disabled veterans to better access that facility in Hebron. They have not come in for CDBG funds for that facility in a very, very long time. So we feel like this would be a good use of the funds. It would be to assist our county's veterans. I did look up that number, is about 14,065, you know, while we're sitting over there. So definitely a good program, provides support to 23 veterans at any given time. So this would enable them to put in some access for ADA and some restoration of parts of the facility.
Who, so if they're a sub-recipient, who is the original?
The state of Illinois is the grantee, and then
Yeah, but
anyone-
who, so this is a sub-recipient, oh, so it's a sub-recipient of the
Just-
state of Illinois.
So we're the sub-recipient in this particular.
You're the sub-recipient.
And they would be the sub-sub.
Oh, all right.
They would be sub-squared.
Okay, okay.
Yep.
It's a good facility.
And does it,
When I
and
lived
this is
there.
for bricks and sticks?
That, exactly, so it's
Okay.
converting the activity over
Okay.
to shelter rehabilitation.
And they're allowed to use that under ESG?
Yes, yes.
Oh.
So that is eligible, under COVID funds it was.
Okay.
Typically on an annual basis, depends on how the state writes its annual action plan. So one of the interesting things about ESG is that we are potentially able to get a direct allocation too, but the formula has not given us an allocation in 25 years or however long, you know, since 95. But some communities go in and out of receiving ESG, like Davenport, Iowa, for example, they're one that has one. So it's a mad scramble. They suddenly get an allocation and they have to figure out what to do with those funds. In this case, we were a sub-recipient of the state.
And because it's not staffing, they'll use it and that'll be that.
That'll be done and then we can close.
Great.
And this is going to rehab of New Horizons
That's correct.
in Hebron. And what's the rehab for, just generally?
Generally ADA compliance issues,
Okay.
and so allowing the veterans to access the facility.
Okay.
Is pretty expensive. And, you know, our director, Adam Wallen, has agreed to, you know, assist with the bid specs and things like that. So
Great.
we're lucky that we're in the department with the people that know how to do all that stuff.
That's right.
Okay, any other questions?
I kind of saw that developed, you know, when I was living there, so this program's
Yeah.
very special to
Yes.
me, and I knew what it was before, and the owner of that hotel that, you know,
The
it
Heidi
became
Ho.
so.
Yes.
Yeah, I know,
You remember that.
wonderful
Yeah.
owners, yeah,
Yeah.
so this was just really a special thing to see blossom there.
Okay. How about we take a vote on 7.3?
Shorten,
Yes.
Ness,
Yes.
Hendricks,
Yes.
Van Hoff,
Yes.
Wagner,
Yes.
Altough,
Yes.
Von Bergen.
Yes. Wonderful, thank you very much, friends,
Absolutely,
for
of course.
all of your insightful information. Okay, so now we are back to item 10, future topics. Does anybody have?
Just the same conversation that we had, that I think that we devote half a meeting, full meeting, you know, to the discussions about housing and prioritizing and criteria for grants, and
I found this meeting very informative.
I did too today. It's a great meeting.
Very informative.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Chairwoman.
How do we put that on the agenda?
Yeah.
Housing, prioritizing grants, and
If you give me, I mean, I could wordsmith.
Because I think
You know, carrying the strategic plan
integrating
into, yeah, something,
funding
right.
goals with
Yeah,
our county
yeah.
strategic
Better,
plan.
yeah.
How can we do
Funding
that effectively?
gotcha.
Yeah. I think that's a good.
That's
And-
kind of at the heart of it is.
Yeah, so then our allocation makes sense when we, and it doesn't look as anecdotal.
Coordinating funding goals with the county strategic.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes.
There you go.
Just
But he
this
didn't
one.
give you minus at all.
Pete, it's like you've done this before.
And even though I know property taxes is a, you know, like a point of serious discussion,
Yeah.
I do believe that it can be had in a way that is meaningful and informative, so we can, you know, because I mean, I never, okay, I don't look at I don't care. For me personally, I'm able to pay my bills. I'm on a fixed income, but I know that services cost money.
But it's not about,
I know.
what it is that times and situations and the pandemic changed things. And we have to do a better job of communicating with our constituents about how we're responding, what we're doing, and how we're being responsible. That's what it is. We need to have those conversations so that our communication efforts can be clearer and better. Then you have a conversation about the balance of how much it costs, is it worth it, and do you bring it up? But you gotta set the stage first. We have to do a much better job.
And
we
and
have-
Kelly's point, and I think something that we discussed in our strategic planning also is looking at duplication of services.
Yes.
Well, I'm
That's so
I'm
important.
highly supportive of consolidation where it makes sense, so.
Well,
That's how we
and
are.
I think this budget and tax also, we have to remember our strategic plan when we're doing it too. We can't just say, you know, oh, we're gonna do this
Right.
because it looks good or because people want us to, well, because it looks good. Because, you know, we spend all that time on our strategic plan because we have heard from our constituents what's important. And I'm not saying, you know, make a decision now or anything, but I think that's all important.
Well, and I think something that because I didn't have those tax questions come up. I know everybody says they came up. They never came up to me. But what the two questions, I won't tell you what the first one was. The second one was, well, what do you do as a county board member? And I was like, well, I don't know exactly. I mean, I know we do something.
But I wanna
We
be
do a
one.
lot of something. But like, you know, to be able to talk about $28 for a dial-a-ride, like that we, as a county, support I can talk about that. But if I don't know about it, I can't talk about it.
And that's
That's a
the
communication
answer.
issue.
I don't know what they do, but I'm gonna go and find out, and I'm gonna make sure they're doing it right.
Well, I did say that. But
Well,
I didn't say make sure you were doing it right. I didn't say that.
Lou, as an assessor for over 20 years, I can tell you that taxes are a huge issue.
I believe it's the number one
It is the number one
reason
issue.
of outmigration from Illinois to other
I
states.
don't disagree with you, I'm
And
saying
maybe
it
it's
didn't-
regional, up in Hebron, maybe.
Oh, it's not. It's all over.
Well, it does come up, but
But we
I
have
do
the
think
lowest
there are
tax
areas
rates,
that
too.
it's more of a
So-
concern than others,
Yeah,
you
but-
know.
well,
I had like a
we can get into
45-minute conversation with someone who lived in
you can school me
Wedgewood.
on the wonkiness.
you know.
And sometimes it's also educating them. Look at your tax bill and see that the majority is our schools.
Oh, absolutely.
We have wonderful schools, and that's the price we pay.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Okay.
different discussion for a
Yes, it
different
is.
time.
Okay.
No, but every time we have the discussion, we educate ourselves a little more. We're a little more able to articulate it clearly to constituents. We listen. I can't do that if we don't have discussions. Then I have only my own experience to, and as amazing as that is in the world.
Which is why
I'm
it'll
the
be
only
another
one.
topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you for this.
I
Was
think
a
we have
good
a
one.
good list of future topics.
Yeah, we'll work a little bit. Obviously, it's a big discussion, so I
Yeah.
want to try and help outline how that discussion is going to unfold, who on staff can participate, and where are decision points and the
I
timing of
think,
those
I think the
decision
first
points.
is an education, isn't it? About where the monies, what we had talked about before, in the big pot of things, how much money, who are we allocating, and then maybe get down into what criteria are we using, how do we evaluate, what's gonna give us the greatest success to meet the strategic goals that we have. So I think the background is much more informative from the beginning, I would
Okay.
think.
And I guess just we talked about consolidation, like with the transportation, like we have duplicative services, but, and this is, I would foresee if there was action taken on it, this would be a long-standing project. But, maybe even consolidation within the county itself, right? Like, does it make sense that does every department need, their own accountant, or can we just set up like an accounting department that handles, everything, and maybe one of them where they can work across departments, I guess, just things like that. Because I do think consolidation, just generally speaking, leads to efficiencies, which theoretically should lead to, more efficient spending, which either lets us delay tax hikes or minimize them, or even cut them in my dream world. But that's just a conversation. And then with the transportation itself, maybe look, if we're expanding transportation services, we used to have those, I think Scott said, the 10 to 12 municipalities that were contributing, and then we expanded to others, and then they said, no, we're not going to contribute. Maybe a discussion of, one, are we going to like a county talk with the various municipalities, seeing if we can get skin in the game on their end, or two, at a minimum, what I'd like to see is if we are expanding, that the municipalities are putting skin in the game for those expanded services.
And how that would affect our ability to get grants. Don't forget, Scott said
Yeah.
one of the big things
Right.
is that because we're doing it, we get more federal support. If
No.
you have buy-in from municipalities, you're gonna lose some of that money.
That's
No,
right.
So
and-
you're not
No,
getting
absolutely.
new,
I'm talking.
you're replacing.
As far as that topic, I'm more interested in if we expand like routes, let's say, or expand a new geographical territory in the county. For that expansion, seeing if we can get buy-in, because I don't know, but I can't imagine that if we're receiving X amount of grants from the federal government or the state government now for those services, I can't imagine requiring some sort of skin in the game for an expanded service would limit it, but I could be wrong, I don't know.
Well, and I
But
think
we
the other-
do the whole county, where would we expand to?
Well,
Well, just adding bus routes, right?
He's
That's a
talking
pace-
about
That's
that.
PACE, we don't do that. County
PACE-
doesn't do that, that's
PACE funds
PACE.
the fixed routes.
Yeah.
It's fare
We do-
box
we
and
do
PACE.
dial
We
right.
don't fund any of the fixed routes.
And the county doesn't allocate any portion to the bus, or we only
Not
pay
the
for the
fixed routes,
taxis?
Not the fixed routes. There's 3 fixed routes that we don't pay anything for.
Okay,
We pay when we retail, but we don't, there's
Right.
no property tax. The county government does not pay for any of the fixed routes.
But
Okay.
the thing the municipalities could do a better job of, quite frankly, is telling the story of what the county does to
Yes.
support.
They got a lot of newsletter space that.
Yeah,
Right.
they
Right.
could,
Huh?
instead of being critical, they could say,
Yeah,
we
my recycling
partner
update.
with, you know.
They're not critical.
I'm sure
They're
they
never
were welcome
critical. They
in
just
this
have it
column.
highlighted.
I just have a question. Years ago, I remember seeing a very comprehensive study about affordable housing now, workforce housing, and the needs, and it was like, it was statewide, and it looked at various communities, and it listed what the need was for housing, and, you know, how many individuals are unhoused, and how many, like, for instance, I remember thinking, Barrington, Illinois, they had how many affordable homes there were in Barrington. I didn't think there were any, but there were some. But my question is, how do we get that information?
It's out
I've
there.
been researching. I can't find numbers on how many unhoused individuals we have in the county.
You know what, the COC, Hans, just put up, and I didn't send it to you because it's their document, and can they get that?
Absolutely.
Can they look at that,
Thank
Yeah,
you.
because I think we have to know what we're talking about.
well, it's in that
Information
document.
first meeting.
Okay.
Information first meeting.
And this is a good chance for me to mention one other thing that I did want to mention. April 27th will be the next meeting of the Regional Plan Commission, and the Housing Authority is going to be one of the presenters.
Okay.
And I think that's, you know, when your audience is the Regional Plan Commission, you're talking about a 2050 plan, I'm confident they're going to have some of that, you know, 10,000 feet, you know, perspective on where our housing needs are
Okay.
for low income.
And I saw that April 27th date, so thank you.
Yeah,
for
but Hans will
mentioning
send you that document if it's okay with the
And
COC.
We'll be able to view that online.
that. Okay, that'd be great.
Okay. Don't believe there's any need for executive session, so if I
My
could get
favorite motion.
motion. All right, so Mr. Hendricks,
Second.
second. Ms. Van Hoff. Thank you, everyone.